Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 271, Adesanya versus Whitaker 2. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Shillan, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. This is the UFC's second pay-per-view of 2022. It is the return to Houston, my hometown. I'll be covering this thing on the ground all week. So, as you might expect, this card loaded with oceanic fighters, Australians, New Zealanders, as you would expect of an Adesanya Whitaker card, kind of the same as if they were actually holding it in Australia. Also packed with Texans, again, as you would expect. The co-headliner, Derek Lewis, easily Texas's probably best fighter right now and certainly most popular. He's right there in the co-main event. And from top to bottom, just, I see a bunch of familiar names from, Fury FC, LFA, just, good solid batch of Texas prospects here. Quite a few karate type guys. I don't know where that fits in, but I was just kind of surprised as I went through just seeing, how many really karate fighters there are on this card. Your Kyler Phillips, Mana Martinez types, and then obviously, Whitaker in the main event. This is a long one, 15 fights, 5-fight main card, and then a full 10 fights, at least, as currently constituted, split between early prelims and regular prelims. Without giving away any picks, outside of the main card, what fight would you say you're kind of most intrigued in or most excited about to watch?
Well, that's a really good question because I'm really excited for the main card. I know you just said outside the main card. So I think I said this last time when we talked about a pay-per-view. Anytime the two best fighters in a weight class are going to fight each other, I'm extremely excited about that. And that very well might be the case, this card with Adesanya and the guy he took the title from, Whitaker. That excites me. You mentioned Derek Lewis, fan favorite, going against another fan favorite in Tai Tuivasa. I think I'm more excited for the guy.
I was going to say, Derek Lewis has already said that he will not be doing a shoey after this fight. You and I might be. We'll see what happens here.
We got to do something Derek Lewis. I mean, it's like pull out like a bucket of Popeyes. You need to eat chicken during the entire breakdown.
I am completely on board with that.
So you get that, obviously. Then you got a very interesting matchup with Derek Brunson and Jared Cannonier, which is really probably the number one contender matchup, which they put it on the card in case something happens to me, especially with a guy like Robert Whitaker, who's so injury prone.
Yes.
As we're taping this right now, like there's a very good chance that we might be, and if this happens, all of a sudden one of these guys say Cannonier's bumped to the main event. Well, we're gonna record our predictions for that if that happens. So obviously the main card, but I don't know if there's a fight that I'm super excited for. I think Alex Perez versus Matt Schnell was a fight that we've been booked a couple times, and it seems like we've been waiting forever. So that was really exciting. I think it's lost a little bit of its mojo now because I think we've predicted it twice already. Mm-hmm. So the third time we're actually going to make a prediction. But I think it's stylistically fun. Ronnie Lawrence versus Mana Martinez, I think, is going to be an absolute war. I think I'm excited to watch the young fighters. I know he's on the main card, but Kyler Phillips is someone I'm really looking forward to. Casey O'Neill is like seems like a budding star that it's not going to be long or I should say it's not going to be much longer that she's fighting on the prelims, it seems like. And then last one I'll say is just not big title implications, but tough fight to pick, and those are always ones I'm excited about. And I'm talking about Alex Hernandez and Renato Moicano. Like that's a really tough fight to pick. So those are like the ones that really jump out to me.
I agree with you top to bottom here, and I'll have a few more comments about several of those fights as we move along. But man, without giving away our picks for that fight, Casey O'Neill, that's a rough going away present for what we have already been told is Roxanne Modafferi's last fight.
Yeah. Let me ask you this before we make our predictions. What is your grade for the card? Like, your pre-grade?
A. Like not quite A+, but I give it absolutely given an A here.
Wow. You're much higher. See, I take these as two categories. If this is a fight night, this is A+. It's, the greatest fight night ever. But, I'm grading it on a pay-per-view scale. I'm gonna just give it a C because the only reason why I'm only giving it a C is because I've seen the main event before. I've seen the main event before. There isn't a second title fight, so that's probably it. But like, it's solid. Like, I'm not complaining. I think it's a good card overall.
Now,
but like to me,
here,
like an A is where I get, third or fourth prelim fight down, and it's two top 10 fighters fighting each other. Like those,
right? Which
cards.
We had a couple of those last year.
We've had those, yeah.
Right. One last question for you: and again, knock on wood, God forbid, something happens and Robert Whitaker drops off this card, it's all of a sudden Adesanya versus Cannonier. Cannonier gets the call up because he hasn't fought Adesanya yet, where Brunson has. Are you secretly more excited for that main event?
I would have been secretly more excited if that was right from the jump. So say you took Whitaker and Cannonier and switched them. Not. I understand why, Whitaker beat Cannonier, so I understand why it's not made. So I'm not arguing for that. But, I wouldn't be excited because that means we lost a marquee fight in Brunson and Cannonier. So does that make sense? Like, I'd rather have two than one.
No, absolutely. Makes sense to me. Unless you've got anything else, we can just dive straight into these prelims.
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of them.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. First one out the gate at UFC 271 is a welterweight matchup between Jeremiah Wells and Mike Blood Diamond Mathetha. Wells, the 35-year-old out of Renzo Gracie, Philly, is 9-2-1 overall. He is 1-0 in the UFC. He made his debut last June, knocking out Warley Alves in just 30 seconds of the second round at UFC Fight Night Gone versus Volkov. He will be taking on the man who goes by Blood Diamond. Tell me if any of this sounds familiar. He is a tall, skinny African fighting out of New Zealand's best fight camp with a lengthy kickboxing record and a pretty impressive highlight reel.
No.
That doesn't ring a bell. No.
Absolutely not.
He is the first Zimbabwe-born fighter to make it to the UFC. Like his teammate at City Kickboxing, Israel Adesanya, he made his way through
that guy.
Yeah.
I
know. Yeah.
I
forget all about him, He is just 3-0 as a professional mixed martial artist, but he has a very lengthy kickboxing career. A side note about this: if you follow kickboxing at all, tracking kickboxing records is a complete nightmare. Like, I'm sure you're used to in MMA, occasionally you'll see a fighter that Tapology has one record for them and Sherdog Fight Finder has like one more or one less fight, especially in the amateur stuff.
Yeah.
You don't know how good you have it. Depending on where you look, Mike Blood Diamond, he has 60 kickboxing matches. He has 110 maybe, like, just because there are so many different promotions and there's not even a semblance of communication or reciprocity between them. And some of them don't even count results from other ones. Yeah, everyone's a world champion. Yeah, it's the worst of boxing and the worst of MMA all smashed together into one.
It's like when you hear about wrestlers, like high school wrestlers, and everyone was a state champion, and then you find out, in the bigger states, like Pennsylvania, there's 14 state champions, but there's only one true state champion, but everyone gets to call themselves, like, you win your sectionals, you really get to call yourself the state champion, the Division 4 state champion. But then they finally have their big one, and one guy wins it. Like, that's your state champion, not the division. Sorry.
No, it's the same as like here in Texas. Your football team could be state champion, but it's only state champions of the schools with like 1,000 or fewer students. And meanwhile, the high school next to me has like 4,000, and they send people to the NFL like on the
That's right. Yeah, if you're quarterback, if we have any high schoolers who watch this show, and I'm sorry to pick on you guys, if you think you won the state championship in Texas and your quarterback doesn't go to like a top 10 NCAA school, you didn't win the state championship in Texas. Like, if your quarterback isn't like signed by Alabama or USC or one of these schools, not happening.
There you go. Wells is stepping in for Mathetha's originally scheduled opponent, Orion Kosi. This matchup is fresh enough that as of right now, and we are recording this, the week before UFC 271, there aren't even any odds yet. Frankly, I would have thought of Orion Kosi as a more interesting first matchup for Mike Blood Diamond, honestly, because if you watch any tape on him, his few MMA bouts, any of his kickboxing, you know what you're getting from the guy. And the questions I would have had about him would all have been answered well by Kosi, who is a short, squat tank of a fighter who, wants to bring the fight to the ground, and against a fighter like this would absolutely have wanted to get the fight to the ground. There would have been a chance to have some questions answered right off the bat. Instead, he's getting Wells. And while I think Wells has a much higher ceiling than Kosi in general as an MMA fighter, Wells is a maniac. If you saw Jeremiah Wells in the Warley Alves fight, where he just came running out of his corner and threw just a flurry of haymakers and just kind of fell into a takedown, just bowling the guy over with just pure aggression and forward momentum. That's pretty much what he does in every single fight. And I don't remember if I said this after the Wells versus Alves fight, but I certainly thought it. He's going to get to a point where that approach, where just pure aggression and superior athleticism, isn't going to work on UFC level fighters. I think he's going to learn it right now, because that is absolutely the approach to get you sniped and become a highlight for Mike Mathetha in his UFC debut. And that's exactly what I'm picking. I think this is going to be probably about a wild 2-minute fight, and it's going to end up with Jeremiah Wells getting absolutely lamped. So give me Mike Mathetha to get the hype train grinding for the next Oceanic kickboxing convert prospect with a first-round knockout.
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually agree with what you were saying. When I agree that I like Jeremiah Wells better than Corsi, but Corsi, you know he's going to go for a takedown. You know he's going to press that pace, going to wrestle, and that's the big mystery about Mathetha. And I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong. Wells, a guy that he's came up on the regional scene. He had a couple good regional titles, including like CS, which is right in my backyard. So I've seen him a lot. He fights with the Daniel Gracie team, the Renzo Gracie Philly, which is a team that I really, really they're like my other. They're like my new Fortis MMA. Where like
think Sean Brady, for those of you at home.
Yeah. So like Fortis MMA was like my team that I was pumping before everybody else. Now like I was on the Renzo Gracie Philly team. Like I like Wells. He's short welterweight, only 5'9", but he's got this like long reach of only 75-inch reach. So he's got a really weird frame. You mentioned he fights out of both stances, southpaw and orthodox, and you mentioned he likes to blitz right out the gate. He charges forward with hard shots. He did it against Warley Alves. He closes his distance so quick. He's one of these guys who just 1 or 2 steps and he's that 12 feet you'll throw you away from next minute you're in the pocket. He's throwing bombs. He'll throw in like spinning attacks and flying knees, like anything to really close the distance and get to the pocket, where he has this raw power. And if he connects, he can really hurt someone. I go back when I was there live when he won against Gary Boletto, who's a pretty decent prospect himself from New England. And he literally broke Gary Boletto's face, like put him out for a long time, multiple jaw surgeries from the shots Jeremiah Wells lands. He throws everything hard. He loads up on everything. But I think he's a little more well-rounded. Like I've seen him wrestle. I've seen him use an offensive wrestling game plan. And I've seen him show solid takedown defense, though I don't think this could be the case in Mathetha. Now, Mathetha is he's a wild card. I mean, he's, as you mentioned, 3-0, the Blood Diamond. I saw the video of Eugene Berriman letting him know he got his UFC contract. We need more of those. Those are really fun to see, especially like when you see how excited like the teams, like you know how like women watch like wedding proposals and stuff like that, like men's, those are we like Hall of Fame, knock on the door, the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
We like surprise black belts when someone gets a black belt surprisingly. And I think like UFC contract. Oh, another one is the NCAA football player who was like the walk on that gets the scholarship, and then like things like this. We just need more of those. They're really just nice. Obviously he's a wild card because he truly is a mystery. I mean, there's only 3 professional MMA fights. They're really hard to find. You punch in his name, you just do a quick Google search, and you're going to get tons of kickboxing videos. As you mentioned, who knows how much kickboxing experience he has. He could have 60 fights. He could have 600. Who knows? They throw the world champion out there very loosely, as we talked already. But what I've seen of him on the feet, obviously he's a very technically sound guy, very Muay Thai style to him, where he's like doing a lot of parrying, incredibly hard kicks, just finds the liver, but just flicking his legs out. He's built like Adesanya, where he's, I don't know if he's as tall as Adesanya, but he's long and lengthy. But I have no clue about his ground game, like at all. What I do like is that he does have a submission on his record. I didn't see that fight. I tried finding it. I couldn't find it. I'm sure someone who's more techy than me could find it. So as far as prediction goes, I know you picked Mathetha, and you picked him like seemed like you were confident. But to me, I think I know you well enough to know that there's no confidence in that pick. I don't think anybody, unless you're out at, training with him every day, you're one of his teammates, then you know his ground game. But other than those people, no one knows. So I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to go Wells, simply because I think Wells is pretty solid. If he's dumb enough to swing and throw bombs, he could connect. He has that power. And we've seen decorated kickboxers get knocked out time and time again. Where remember when Cleo Roundtree was the guy he knocked out?
Gokhan
Saki, and not a perfect example, but Mirko Krokop getting knocked out by Gabriel Gonzaga and Kevin Randleman. Like this, even though someone's more decorated, MMA is a weird sport where different gloves, different things. So he could win by knockout, but he's got to know, like, I'm going to take this guy to the ground. I'm going to wrestle him. I think Daniel Gracie is a really good instructor. Obviously, he's a Gracie. I know that's through marriage, but he's a Gracie. Jiu-jitsu is a big part of their team. I'm going to say Wells gets a couple takedowns, and this might be one of these picks 3 years from now when Mathetha is fighting for a title, and I'm like, why the hell did I make that pick? It's just simply I don't know enough, so I'm picking against him.
Outstanding. Got a round into Mathetha.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll say Wells gets a submission. I'll say he does it in the second round.
Outstanding. We have some dissension right out the gate in a fight that both of us admit is a really hard one to pick. Next up at UFC 271 is a bantamweight matchup between Douglas Silva de Andrade and Sergey Morozov. Andrade, the 36-year-old Brazilian, is 27-4 with one no contest overall. He is 5-4 in the UFC, although those were mixed between featherweight and bantamweight appearances. Most recently, he knocked out Gaetano Perello in the first round at UFC Fight Night Santos versus Walker. That was back on October 2nd of last year. That allowed him to turn things around from a unanimous decision loss to Laron Murphy at UFC on ESPN Chiesa versus Magny in January. He's taking on Morozov. The 32-year-old Kazakhstani is 17-5 overall. He is 1-1 in the UFC. Made his debut at UFC on ESPN Chiesa versus Magny last January. Got choked all the way to sleep by Umar Nurmagomedov. He came back and took a unanimous decision over Khalid Taha at UFC on ESPN Makhachev versus Moises in July. Odds on this one favor the Kazakhstani. Morozov is out there at -210. Andrade at +180 as the underdog. Keith, I'm going to turn this over to you for your pick first, but one thing that jumped out to me is that there's every chance that this will not be a very exciting fight. Like, these are two guys that have just proven themselves kind of willing to wait and fight at a deliberate pace by the standards of this division. So where usually, to me, almost every bantamweight fight is fun. Like, bantamweight fights are like pizza. When they're good, they're great. When they're bad, they're still pretty good. This one could, kind of be like your 1990s Domino's, when Domino's was like really, really shitty pizza, kind of like that, rather than like modern Domino's, where it's like, hey, that's not too bad. Anyways, tell me what you think of this fight and who you think wins.
My kids love Domino's. We always make picks on pizza. Like, every time we order pizza, like a new person gets a pick. My kids, they love picking Domino's. But anyways, so I think the Andrade, I understand what you're saying. Like, I think he has a little bit of like Andre Arlovski we have in this card too, but where he was a high output guy, and now as he gets later, he understands that his gas tank has kind of folded a little bit, so he has to fight at a slower, more deliberate, slow pace, and it also protects your chin as you get older, which I actually think is probably a good strategy for him. He's a compact fighter. bury the lead. One thing I always like to say is talk about his age. You don't like a guy being in his late 30s fighting in a lower weight class. So obviously, that's what I was trying to say with the Arlovsky comparison. But I think he's intelligent. He understands what best serves him. He's a short, compact guy. He slides in the pocket, unloads power shots, a lot of power hooks. Very like Jessica Andrade type, not to the pace as you're saying, and not, and he doesn't have like the comparison of her power, her physical attributes. I just mean like her style. Like he wants to get in the pocket, bob and weave, loads up on everything. His left hook is really his best strike. I'd say his good power. I mean, I go back to that Perillo fight in his last fight where he like lifted him off the feet with a single punch. It was really impressive for such a low weight class. He doesn't check leg kicks because he's so heavy on that front foot because of his power, which is obviously disturbing. But he mixes in takedowns well. Like he's got some pretty good entries. He's a good topside grappler. Not the best defensive grappling, and he really struggles to get off his back. I always go back, and I know it's been a while now, but like I watched up Renan Barão was having success with takedowns against him, which is disturbing. He also in his entire career only has one submission, which you don't like that. But I would say he has good power for someone who throws, so hard. But can he deliver that for 15 minutes? At this point of his career, I'm not really sure. And I think he's slowed down a little bit. I think his physical skills are really deteriorating. But I think overall, I like him a little bit more. I think he's a little better than he's been credited over the years. Now, Morozov is a guy that when he came to the UFC just jumped out at me of how well-rounded and how good of an athlete he is. He's light on his feet. He's got good footwork, good movement, pretty technically sound. Fast, decent pop in his hands, mixes punches and kicks together well in combinations, which I love. Will attack the calves with some hard leg kicks. He mixes in takedowns with his striking, which I love. Good at fast entries, both on the hips and like body locks. He's big for the weight class, which I like. He does need to improve his top control. He's very aggressive when it hits the ground. And I'm glad that you said he's deliberate on the feet. He's more aggressive on the ground, so a little different. But hard ground and pound, and he has 3 submission wins. So as far as prediction goes, I'm going to go with the Kazakhstan fighter, Morozov, to win. I think De Andrade is a tough test for him, being, again, his first real test in the UFC. I just don't trust De Andrade to continue to fight like he did early in his career, as you mentioned, much more higher pace. I think he might give away rounds at a slower pace. I think Morozov is a better athlete than De Andrade is, which really is a rare thing for De Andrade over his career. I expect Morozov to pop shot him from the outside, and when De Andrade works to get to the pocket, I actually think Morozov can get some takedowns, some clinch takedowns, and I think he's going to win by decision.
Yeah, I'm with you here. The line seemed a little bit out of whack to me on this one, just because De Andrade is such a more proven product at this point. I mean, he's really only lost to very, very good fighters, and wins over people like Marlon Vera and even Cody Gibson are better than anything Morozov has on his record. But the obvious upside is with Morozov. Like at 32, he's probably just kind of right in the middle of his prime, and I think that loss to Umar Nurmagomedov is going to end up aging really, really well, because I think Nurmagomedov is probably a future champ in that division. And I agree with you that Andrade's physical gifts seem to be slipping quickly, which leads me to see it about like you do. I could see there being kind of a tentative striking match for most of the first round, or maybe even the entire first round. But late first round, early second, Morozov will hit that first takedown, and then from there, I think it's going to be pretty easy sledding for him. Give me Morozov by unanimous decision.
Yeah, and I should say this before we move on. When I talk about his first test in UFC, I mean like of a fight he won. That's
right.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We now head to the middleweight division for the debut of undefeated AJ Dobson against Jacob Malkoun. Dobson, the 30-year-old Ohio native, is 6-0 with 1 no contest as a professional. This will be his UFC debut, but he won on Dana White's Contender Series last September over Hashem Arkaga by rear naked choke late in the first round. He'll be taking on Malcoon, the 26-year-old Australian teammate of Robert Whittaker, is 5-1 as a professional. He is 1-1 in the UFC. He made his promotional debut at UFC 254 in October of 2020. Got starched by Phil Hawes in about 15 seconds. Came back last April at UFC on ESPN, Whitaker versus Gastelum, and took a lopsided unanimous decision over Abdulrazak Alhassan to get back on track, and now welcomes Dobson to the UFC. The odds here, fairly close, but Dobson is the slight favorite. He's minus 150. You can get the Australian at plus 130 on the comeback. Keith, we've kind of been through the whole roller coaster ride with Malcoon. Both you and I openly questioned why this 4-0 guy was debuting in the UFC. Was it anything other than just kind of a tip of the hat to Robert Whitaker? And the performance against Phil Hawes obviously kind of bore out those doubts, but he looked great in his next fight. Now he's the underdog once again. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed it out, because his win over Alhassan was a pretty good upset at that time, and he won it fairly easily. And it kind of answered some of the questions we had about Malkoun, is that he's much better than I originally thought he was.
And got a 10-8 round in the second round on the ground.
That's right. That's right. And that was actually some of the questions we had. We thought he'd be good at grappler, but weren't sure about his wrestling, and it really was his wrestling that shined. And on the feet, I mean, obviously he didn't want to really throw down with Alhassan, because we've seen, go back to like Sabah Hamasi, what happened when you throw down with Alhassan and other guys. But I think he showed some pretty well-rounded skills. He's an okay boxer, Malkoun, decent hand speed. I like that he attacks with combinations, though he can be a little right hand happy, a little Chuck Liddell and that. But plus power, I said this last time, I'll say it again, and this is go back to his regional things. He constantly always attacks on a straight line. It doesn't really vary and doesn't cut angles. And I said last time, it's like he says, okay, now I attack with a combination. I like that he's throwing a combination, but needs to disguise some of his attacks. But his wrestling was much better against Alhassan than I expected. He did shoot a little too far away for some of my likings, but he showed some good top position control. He was advanced in position on the ground. And what I think I liked most is that he saw a huge hole, a weakness, somewhere that he has an advantage. And he saw an opponent's weakness, and he exposed it, and he stuck to a game plan that was working. And I like that. I like to see that in a young fighter. The move with Dobson 6-0, a boxer, very, very aggressive on the feet. It's funny, I just mentioned that Malkoun can get right hand happy, Chuck Liddell. Same with Dobson. He throws that overhand right like a baseball throw that you used to always say. Big power, but he can be wild. Like, he's trying to end the fight with every single punch he throws. He's very physically strong. You see that when he gets to the plum clinch. He was briefly rocked in his last fight, which I don't like, but he recovered in that fight, was landing bigger shots. He will go for takedowns. He's not just a boxer, and he showed in his last fight. He took some hard ground upon. If he didn't catch that submission, he was going to stop the fight if he just kept punching. Now, he got a submission in his last fight, which I like that. And he also has a few on his amateur record, which I like. So he seems a little more well-rounded than he showed. As far as prediction goes, I had no confidence in Malkoun before. I feel much better about him now. However, I love Dobson's aggression. He might gas himself out. It's very, very good chance he tries ending the fight early, gasses himself out. He throws these wild punches and sets up Malkoun's takedowns. But if he connects with one of these shots, he has the power to end it. I don't know what we're gonna happen. We saw, Malkoun get absolutely blasted one fight and then put on a wrestling clinic. Can he put on a wrestling clinic against Dobson? That's a very good chance. But I'm gonna say he doesn't. I'm gonna say, and this is just a pure gut call, I'm gonna say Dobson connects with something, and I think he's gonna put him out in the first round.
There you go. And if you're a regular follower of the show, you know that Keith and I have been on this several weeks long stretch of agreeing on way too many fights, and that deprives you of the excitement that you expect when Keith and I get really mad at each other and call each other idiots. I'm kidding, we don't do that. But I am going to differ from him here, and really it's the Alhassan fight that makes me pick Malkoun here, because this is third fight in a row in his UFC career where he's facing a guy with one-shot knockout power. Like, he learned from the Hawes fight, because if he'd gone in with the same approach, Alhassan is a guy who could absolutely have replicated that against him, and Malkoun took the path of less resistance. He was willing to hang out on the feet, but he didn't put himself in positions to eat one of those. And he went for the takedown every time it was given to him and just went to victory that way. I think Dobson's ground game is probably better than Alhassan's, Judo Thunder nickname aside. So it might not be a thing where he just completely dominates once he gets him down, but I think he's going to get him down enough that between whatever damage he can do on the ground, whatever time he can spend there, with his chin not on Dobson's gunnery range, and then, of course, whatever adjustments that makes Dobson make on the feet, because all of a sudden he's aware of the threat of the takedown. I think that's going to be enough to carry the fight for Malkoun here. So give me Jacob Malkoun by decision, but this should be a fun one. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. Keith and I just had to have a lengthy conversation about how at Eagle 44 this past weekend, Yorgan De Castro got back to his winning ways, and we should see him back in the UFC any minute. So we look forward to, the next UFC preview with, the custodian on it. Anyway, next up, light heavyweight matchup between Carlos Ullberg and Fabio Cherant. Ullberg, the 31-year-old New Zealander, again, another city kickboxing export here. He's just 3-1 as a professional mixed martial artist, but like Mike Mathetha that we discussed earlier, does have a fairly extensive kickboxing career as well. He lost in his last fight. It was his UFC debut. He faced Kennedy Nzechukwu at UFC 259 last March. Back and forth first round, but got himself knocked out in the second. That was the first setback of his professional mixed martial arts career. He is going to look to turn it around against Wrentham, Massachusetts' finest, Fabio the Water Buffalo Cherant. 27-year-old Massachusetts native is 7-3 overall. He is 0-2 in the UFC. Made it to the UFC on short notice after losing on Dana White's Contender Series Season 3. He got knocked out by Alexa Kamer, went back to LFA and CES, won 3 straight, made it to the UFC. Since being in the UFC, he has lost to Alonzo Menefield via not quite a Von Flue choke, just sort of a shoulder pressure choke from top position. That was in March at UFC 260. Then faced William Knight in a battle of New England versus New England. That night, Connecticut won out over Massachusetts. Knight knocked him out late in the first round at UFC on ESPN, Cannonier versus Gastelum. Odds on this one favor Ullberg to be the one who gets back to winning ways. He is minus 195, Cherant plus 165 as the underdog. Keith, 2 men looking for their first UFC win, looking for redemption. Who gets it and how?
Yeah, so Cherant obviously is a guy I'm very familiar with. His gym is in the same city I work in. I was at his gym today. I stopped in and talked to one of his coaches. Not about that, about something different. But so Cherant, he's a southpaw. I think he's undersized for the weight class. He's still pretty young and he's still raw on the feet. Some major mistakes he has. He lacks head movement. He tends to back straight up. I am a little worried about his chin after he was knocked dead by William Knight moving forward. He doesn't like being pressured or fighting off his back foot. He likes to be the one kind of slowly marching forward. And he can fight at times. It's weird. Sometimes he has pretty decent output, but there's other times he tends to throw one punch at a time, kind of slow paced. But there's some things I do like about him. His straight left punch is pretty accurate. His offensive striking is okay. He does a good job at exploding and closing distance, similar to what we talked about Jeremiah Wells, where he's very deceiving how explosive he is to suddenly make a distance much shorter than you expect. He likes to grapple. He's going to grapple. He's not a strong wrestler, but he'll catch a kick or something. He'll get the fight to the ground somehow. And he's got some heavy ground and pound. He is a submission threat. He has 5 submissions in his career already.
7 wins, yeah.
Yeah, he likes head attacks, guillotines, a little bit of his guillotines, anacondas, those kind of like his specialty. But as you mentioned, he kind of got semi Von Flue choked by Alonzo Menefield. So how good is the competition that he submitted if Menefield's styling on him like that? Now move on to Ullberg. Lots of high level kickboxing experience, very athletic. He's on the feet. He's calm. He's accurate. He's fast. Good output. Uses feints really, really well. He with both of his hands, he's got power in both of his hands. I like that he uses feints with his hips, so he kind of like faking the legs, kind of get you really guessing. He really understands distance, how to move, not be hit. Good. He's got his right hand glued to his head to kind of protect from the opposite side attacks. Bit of a high guard. Good kicks. He likes those like unorthodox John Jones oblique kicks. I like his takedown defense. I know if you're going to pick against him, that's probably where we're going to attack. I think it's going to be much harder to take down than people expect. And I really, honestly, I think the Nchukwu fight was a fluke. I think it was just one of those. I mean, he was styling on Nchukwu for most of that fight. So, prediction: Cherant's going to try to get the fight to the ground really fast. I don't think he's going to be able to. I think he's going to get picked apart. I think the New Zealand fighter is going to knock him out cold. I think he's going to do it in the very first round. So give me So you got a guy from Australia going against a guy from New England. I love New England, so I'm going to pick the guy from all the way to the other side of the world. Give me Ullberg first round knockout.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say here. Also, like they'll be listed at like 2 or 3 inches apart in height. Cherant listed at like 6'1", 6'2", Ullberg at 6'4", but the apparent size difference between the two guys is going to be enormous once they get to the cage. Because Cherant didn't look especially taller than William Knight and looked like he probably weighed less than William Knight. And William Knight is, of course, well, we'll talk about him later.
He's like
you all know.
4'11".
Yeah, you guys all know my go-to line about William Knight. No, Ullberg is going to be way bigger, and when you have someone with that superior size, that much better athleticism, and just a career's worth of kickboxing experience and management of distance and footwork that you mentioned, that's going to be rough sledding for Cherant, a guy who does not have especially good wrestling entries but needs to get the fight to the ground. I'm with you here, and I am curious, as to what Ullberg's gas tank will be like if he's dragged into deep waters, if he has to defend takedowns a lot. Even if Cherant is like really trying for the takedown and just can't get it in the first and second round, if he manages to work for them in ways and in situations that are draining Ullberg's tank faster than his, that can make things interesting late. But, I'm with you here. I certainly looked for ways to justify the upset, but this is made to order for Carlos Ullberg. And I'm going to say that Cherant makes it to the second round, that, Ullberg is just going to be probably cautious after getting caught and absolutely starched in a fight that he was winning pretty handily against Kennedy and Nchukwu. He might be a little more reserved, but once they both realize that Cherant's not going to be able to get the takedown, it's going to be target practice time. So give me Ullberg by second round knockout. Next up at UFC 271, a couple of lightweight fringe contenders will try to keep their momentum going. It is Alexander Hernandez versus Renato Moicano. Hernandez, the 29-year-old Texan now training out of Colorado, is 13-4 overall. He's 5-3 in the UFC. Won his last time out. He knocked out Mike Breeden in like 90 seconds at UFC Fight Night Santos versus Walker. That allowed him to turn things around after a unanimous decision loss to Thiago Moises last February. And he has, in fact, alternated wins and losses in his last 9 UFC bouts. He'll be taking on Moicano, the former featherweight contender, now at lightweight, is 15-4-1 overall. He's 7-4 in the UFC. He also won his last time out, choking out Jai Herbert in the second round at UFC Fight Night Gane versus Volkov. That allowed him to turn things around after a first-round knockout blasting by Rafael Fiziev in December of 2020 at UFC 256. Odds on this one are fairly close, but Moicano is the favorite. He's minus 170. Hernandez plus 150 on the comeback. Keith, who you got in this one?
Man, this is a tough one. I think the line should pretty much be a pick'em. This is a fight that I'm really looking forward to stylistically because it really is a test for both guys. I mean, Moicano's trying to prove that he's one of the top lightweights. He's had a so-so run of that, and Hernandez came in like a body of hell, came into the UFC super excited, then took some terrible losses, and now he's starting to show new life. Hernandez, he's well rounded. He's pretty technically sound boxer, fast hands, accurate hands. He does well to dart in and out of range. He's kind of one of these guys all the way out, all the way in. I love some of the combinations he throws. Like I wrote that as a note a while ago, and I keep mentioning it because I really like it. His left jab to the body, overhand right combo was just landing over and over against Grishmacher. I like that. He's really beginning to measure his foes. It's something that we'll talk about Tuivasa later on, where Chael Sonnen pointed out that Tuivasa was measuring. Hernandez is doing the same thing, and that's just a sign of confidence, where you measure, you know you can't miss. Really understanding distance, stuff like that. Hard kicks, he does well to mix up punches and kicks together in combinations. He's got some good power. He needs to conserve his energy a little bit. He can overthrow some shots and wear out, but decent wrestling, nice entries, pretty good at winning scrambles. Not much of a submission threat. Move over to Moicano. Now he obviously is a submission threat. He's well rounded. Different. Well, I would say Hernandez is more of a boxing style. Moicano is more of a Muay Thai stylist in his striking. Bit of a stationary target standing right in front of you, but I'd say his boxing is decent. Some great leg kicks. You go a win that has aged really, really well for Malkoun was his win over Calvin Kattar, with blasting Calvin Kattar's legs, chewed him up with his leg kicks. He's a very underrated wrestler, Moicano. He has a really strong ability to get the fight to the ground. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a high-level black belt, great submission game, some slick back takes. I think he has about 7 or 8 submission wins. But I'm worried about his chin. I mean, he won his last fight, but he was knocked out by Jose Aldo. He was knocked out by the Korean Zombie. It was the very first punch the Korean Zombie threw. Fiziev obviously is a knockout that has, a lot of people are really high on Fiziev, but that's 3 KO losses recently, in the last couple of years. So as prediction goes, I've really flip-flopped back and forth on this one a lot. Moicano is the better fighter so far in his career. He's beaten the better competition. However, I just don't trust his chin anymore. And Hernandez can crack. And before tape study, I didn't think I was going to take Hernandez. But this is more of an. It's weird. I don't know if I want. I enjoyed Hernandez's rise. I loved. I know people hated on him for his trash talking Donald Cerrone. I love that somebody in history has trash talked Donald Cerrone. It was fun. I don't know if I'm trying to will that into being, but I also like Moicano. I like him being a contender. And truth is, the winner of this fight is going to stay a contender or fringe contender, and the loser's out. They're way out. So there's a lot riding on this fight. But I'm gonna say Hernandez gets it done. I'm gonna say he catches the chin of Moicano. I'm gonna say he does it in the second round.
Awesome. I'm with you. I went back and forth for the same reasons you did, and 2 things ultimately kind of pointed me in the direction of Hernandez. One is that, he's still not even 30, and it feels like he's been in the UFC for a long time. But he came along really young. He was brash. Obviously, you mentioned the Cerrone thing, where he dared throw rocks at the throne of the ultimate UFC fan favorite, and he learned his lesson. That was a humbler, because Cerrone absolutely schooled him. But his game has had to mature as well. His first 2 fights. The hype train can't help but start cranking when your UFC debut has you knocking out Beneil Dariush in 40 seconds. But he was over aggressive in his first couple UFC fights. Then I thought Cerrone might have broken something in Hernandez's head, just because his next fight after that was the Trinaldo fight. And while he got a decision there, frankly, he probably shouldn't have got the decision, but more importantly, it was maybe the worst UFC fight I've ever seen in person that wasn't a heavyweight fight. It was one of the most boring fights ever, because Hernandez was so gun shy. Just afraid of overextending himself and getting caught, afraid of overextending himself and getting taken down. And against a guy equally passive in Trinaldo, it just made for the worst fight ever. And I think I started to write Hernandez off a little bit, but somewhere in there, and it might have been right after that fight, he switched from Ohana Academy in San Antonio, started training at Factory X. I'm not sure exactly how many fights it's been, but he seems to be turning a corner there. And I agree with you that now, instead of panicking or buttoning up, he does measure his opponents. And against Moicano, I think that's going to work in his favor. Moicano has generally faced a higher level of opposition. He's been higher in divisional rankings than Hernandez. Certainly, he's been spoken about as I mean, he was within a fight of a title shot. But all of his best accomplishments are at featherweight. He was a tall, skinny featherweight. He's still not, I mean, he's still going to be easily taller than Hernandez at lightweights, but he's not going to have the bulk. Hernandez is a big, powerful, explosive athlete of a lightweight. Moicano really never was, even at featherweight. And like you, I do worry about his chin. And Hernandez is someone who can test that chin. That's my long way around to saying that I'm exactly with you on this. I have Hernandez in the mild upset. I have him also by second round knockout. Next up at UFC 271 is a pair of bantamweights looking to build on the momentum of their successful octagon debuts. It is Leomana Martinez versus Ronnie Lawrence. Martinez, the 25-year-old Houston native, is 9-2 overall. He's 1-0 in the UFC. He is a veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought on the 2020 version, but was choked out by Draco Rodriguez. He went back to Fury, won the bantamweight title, won 2 fights, and got the call-up last August at UFC on ESPN Barboza versus Chikadze, where he took a split decision over Guido Canetti. He is taking on Lawrence. The 29-year-old Tennessean is 7-1 overall. He is also 1-0 in the UFC. He won on the 2020 version of Dana White's Contender Series, taking a unanimous decision over Jose Johnson. Made his debut last February at UFC Fight Night Rosenstrike versus Gane, where he knocked out Vince Cachero in the 3rd round. Lawrence, one of the bigger favorites on the card. He is minus 300, Martinez plus 235 as the substantial underdog. I'll say this. I mean, obviously, I have a little bit of bias here. You know, Keith and I both have regional biases. It's just that mine is in favor of my local fighters, and it seems to be the opposite. But all that aside, like, you know, even before I worked in the media in any sort of professional capacity, I have thought Mana Martinez was one of the top prospects in Texas since he was literally a teenager. You know, when I first saw him, he was a skinny, rail-thin bantamweight who had shocking knockout power for a guy who was built like he was, but physically wasn't that strong. And, you know, his only loss, like until the Contender Series appearance, his only losses had been to guys who could just kind of physically push him around, push him back, take him down. And I figured those problems would work themselves out and we'd see him as a high-level UFC talent at some point. He is in the UFC right now. Some of those questions have still not been answered. Some have. He is filled out and he is no longer, you know, a skinny kid, you know, from his parents' karate school. He's long and rangy, but more in the Corey Sandhagen way, where he's like, you know, 5'10", 5'11", but he's got some muscle on him, but just a rangy fighter. Still, you can tell he's a karate fighter. You know, you can tell it from his stance, way he holds his hands, long kicks, long straight punches. He throws in combination. He still has plus power by the standards of that division. I mean, we're not in the era anymore where, oh, you know, none of the 125 or 135ers have power. Plenty of them do. Martinez has more than most, but he still is susceptible to being put on his back foot. Doesn't love being pressured. When he can dictate the distance, when he dictates the range, he is a sniper. He can be flustered by people that are able to put him on the back foot. He still can be taken down. And in one of his last fights in Fury, it was the David Rivera fight. It was actually the one before he appeared on the Contender Series. Fighting a completely overmatched opponent, he still reacted to a takedown attempt by jumping, guard with a guillotine, and ended up losing that round. And I thought, that's like, don't take that habit, to the next level with you. I frankly don't understand how this line is how it is. Like, Lawrence looks like a good prospect to me, but his appearance on the Contender Series, like, it was good, but not off the charts amazing. He beat Cachero pretty bad, but I haven't seen, like, out of Lawrence, other than Dana White being, like, mysteriously high on him, like, what there is to make him a 3-1 favorite over Martinez, even though he is the kind of fighter who can give him trouble. Lawrence comes forward. He is aggressive. He is a decent offensive wrestler and does a pretty good job of mixing his takedowns in with his striking. So if this just turns into a thing where Lawrence comes forward, puts Martinez on the back foot, gets a couple takedowns, and either uses them to win rounds or just, actually starts hurting him from the top and, and gets a finish. It wouldn't surprise me. He's a favorite for a reason, but I expected him to be like, minus 180 and Martinez like plus 140 or something. So if I were a betting man, I would certainly be taking the value pick on Martinez here. He should not be plus 235 or plus 240. And even though it is a bit of an upset pick, I am going to take Martinez here. I'm, this is sort of an intangibles type call, but the Metro Fight Club guys, and he and Adrian Yanez are the two big ones that have basically taken over running the team since Salsalee's died. That team, seems to be coalescing and coming together, where some other gyms might simply have just broken apart and gone, to pieces and gone to other teams. They seem to be pulling things together, and I'm gonna call for Martinez's skills to have continued to improve here. Give me Leomana Martinez by second round knockout, just catching Lawrence coming forward, with a kick or some straight punches and putting him down.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with so much of the stuff you're saying. Like, I actually might be even stronger against the odds, where I think you said like negative 180. I think it should be Lawrence should be about negative 115 or negative 110. Like, to me, this is close to a pick 'em. That's why I'm excited. I'm excited for this matchup because I agree with you. Like, I like Mana Martinez. I like Ronnie Lawrence. I think they're both good additions to the UFC. I think I was a little higher on Lawrence than you are coming out of the Contender Series, but I love that style of the matchup, and it's really a fantastic stylistic matchup between these two. I think it's a much tougher matchup than the odds are saying stylistically, but I hate it because I would rather have seen them fight other guys. I would rather have seen them fighting aging veterans instead of having two younger fighters. And I know Lawrence is 29, so he's not that young, but Lawrence, I'm going to spend more time talking about Lawrence for a second because I felt like you really hit it on the head with Martinez with the, doesn't like pressure. He can be taken down, but when he's, when he's in his range, he uses his head movement so well. He has a slip and rip style from the southpaw stance where he's a sniper, as you mentioned, counter striker, good vision to see his attacks. He does drop his hands, which I don't like, but his pullback left hand is like Conor McGregor-ish. It's that nice. I love that he goes to the body. He's got power, as you mentioned. Like, for a guy who's got a weird frame, he's got power in both hands, and he has a killer instinct. Like, when he has you hurt, he's going to put you down. Good leg kicks. He uses feints really well to set up his shots, calf kicks. Can sneak in a high kick. I'm not going to talk about the negatives that you talked about, especially the jumping guillotine, which I hate. Like, Mana, we like you. We both like you. Get that. But the thing is, though, he's hit it. Like, I swear the worst thing that happens to a fighter is they hit a guillotine. It's the worst because they keep going for it, a la Dustin Poirier. So Lawrence, he's a very composed striker. He fights well from both stances. He uses feints really well. He's got a stinging, I would say, a power jab, a nice right cross. He also targets the body. I would say plus power. Like, Martinez definitely has the bigger cracking power, but Lawrence, has plus power. He likes to throw some spinning attacks, lots of kicks. He also has a killer instinct. Like, when he has you hurt, he's probably going to find a way to put you out. He really turns it up when he has the opponent hurt, which I like. He's a good wrestler too, though. He's not just a striker. He'll mix in some takedowns, solid takedown defense if you're trying to take him down. And if you do take him down, he springs back to his feet really well when taken down. So as far as prediction goes, like you said, I'm with you. This is really, really close. If it remains on the feet, it's anybody's fight. And I agree with you. If Lawrence isn't backing up Martinez and Martinez finds his range, holds his ground, Lawrence is not going to want to stand in the pocket and unleash with Martinez. You got me super excited. I was already excited for the fight. I'm super excited now because I'm really intrigued what's going to happen when they throw down. Lawrence is the better grappler, and to me, there's more avenues of victory for him based on that. And I'm simply picking him simply because I can see him out wrestling Lawrence. So I'm going to say, out wrestling Martinez. I'm going to go with Lawrence. I'm going to take him by decision. But, dude, when it comes to betting, or like I don't really play DraftKings anymore, but if you play DraftKings and you want to bet high on some of the favorites and you need some cheap money, if you get Martinez, I'm sure he's probably one of the cheapest guys out there. Throw him in your lineups because this guy can crack.
And one last note, it probably won't win it, especially on a 15-fight card, but this is the fight that'll probably deserve fight of the night.
Yeah, it could be.
Like we've got a couple other contenders coming up here, but like this will be one of the best fights of the night.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be hard to beat out Andre Arlovski versus Jared Vanderaa, but
Light heavyweights take to the octagon once again, as it is William Knight and Maxime Grisham. Knight, the 33-year-old Connecticut native, is 11-2 overall. He's 3-1 in the UFC since joining as a two-time veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He appeared on Season 3 in 2019, where he won, and then in the 2020 edition, where he won again, that time a first-round stoppage of Cody Brundage that did punch his ticket to the big show. He is on a 2-fight winning streak. Those coming over, Fabio Cherant, whom he knocked out in the first round at UFC on ESPN, Cannonier versus Gastelum, and then most recently a unanimous decision over Alonzo Menefield at UFC on ESPN, Font versus Aldo back in December. He'll be taking on Grisham. The 37-year-old Russian is 31-9-2 overall. He is 1-2 since joining the UFC as a former two-time playoff contender in PFL. He lost his last time out, a very close decision loss to Dustin Jacoby at UFC Fight Night, Rosenstrike versus Gane. Odds on this one slightly favor the Russian. He's -180, Knight +155. This is a fight between two people that on the non-championship level, like counting out people like Manel Kopp and Michael Chandler, it's one of the more pleasant surprise signings by the UFC against one of the bigger disappointments in the last couple of years. Like, I expected little out of William Knight when he signed to the UFC. He seemed kind of like a novelty. When you get a bricked up guy like that, who's a little old for like as short a record as he has, I'm like, oh, this will be fun for however many fights it lasts. And instead, he's 3-1 in the UFC, and he's not fighting for his job. Like he's good to go. He's a real live UFC light heavyweight. He's on a 2-fight win streak. And then Grisham coming in out of PFL, he was always one of the better guys in the division, and just things always seem to go bad at the wrong moment. And that's a bad way to be in PFL, where your season ends if you have one bad fight. But he has absolutely laid an egg ever since. We can forgive him the loss to Tybura in his debut. Tybura is a top 10 heavyweight. Grisham is not a heavyweight, but he beat Gaji Murad Antagulov, which was literally, I think, Antagulov's 4th loss in a row. So not really a win over UFC level light heavyweight. Then he lost to Dustin Jacoby. The good news is he probably should have won that fight. I and most people scored it for Jacoby. The bad news is that Grisham blew weight by like 5 pounds. So he gets no pity from me whatsoever. He might be fighting for his job here. They're just at 37, not a whole lot of upside, not shown many signs of life as a light heavyweight. I don't understand why he's the favorite here. Like, I just flat out don't get it. I would have picked William Knight if he were the favorite, if this were a pick 'em. I think Knight's going to be able to do what he does. He needs to bounce into range to, get into his preferred punching distance against a much taller guy like Grisham. I think he's going to be able to. Grisham is slow on his feet, doesn't have great footwork. I think Knight's just going to bounce in and put him out, probably with a big right hand. Give me William Knight by first round knockout.
Wow. So William Knight obviously is a guy that he's from my region. He's always at every local scene. I've said it many times. He's like the most physically imposing person I've seen. Like he I think he wears a tank top no matter what. If it's February, he's wearing a tank top. And honestly, I don't blame him. So he's a really good balance between raw power and athleticism. I promise, like if you've heard this before, I'm going to say it every time. I promise I'll never stop saying this. I remember William Knight, I've been watching since he was an amateur, and I always remember when he was fighting Jorgen De Castro in a amateur fight. And in between rounds, between the first and second round, he put on a breakdancing show and was doing backflips and didn't go to his corners. It was great. I'll never forget it. He had to be there. It was at what was it? Not Cage. I don't remember which one it was. It wasn't Cage Titans. It was I can't think of his name. Kip Kohler's organization, right? But he he was doing the worm. His corner's like calling him to come back, and he's like, it was fantastic. So, but since that time as an amateur, I don't know if his striking technique has improved at all. Like he's honestly, for a guy who's so like ripped up, he's kind of slow. He telegraphs his strikes a lot. He pulls his head straight back. He struggles with length based on the fact that he's like 4'11". But he does have earth-shattering power. I mean, you asked Fabio Cherant that if he connects. Thunderous leg kicks, though he often throws them naked, and sometimes he's like off balance and he's open to counters. But there's times he'll just bull rush into the clinch, and I actually think his wrestling is probably the best part of his game. I would say he's a decent wrestler. He's all right. Ready? I'm gonna insult he's a New England wrestler. If that's like, I'm sure he was a great Connecticut wrestler. I'd say he's good hip control. He likes lateral drops, which it does not work against anybody who's any good in wrestling. But he did do it against Alexa Kmart. So what does that tell you about Alexa Kmart's wrestling? But if he's on top, William Knight's got to be one of the scariest persons on top in history. It's up there with like Derek Lewis and Fedor Emelianenko. Like he struggles with takedown defense though. I mean, he was taken down 8 times by Dong Un Jung recently. He gets up a bunch of times, but you like that. But he was also in that fight alone was controlled for 12 minutes. And Jung is not Ben Askren out there. He's no submission threat at all. Going back to the camera fight, he was actually saved at the end of the round in a deep key lock. But I already mentioned Derek Lewis with the ground and pound. He has a little Derek Lewis in him where he's got this tons of heart. And he always finds a way to turn around. Not always, I shouldn't say, but a lot of times he turns around fights that are not going his way, and suddenly he makes a good comeback. And he's one of these guys who looks so exhausted, but still very effective, like Derek Lewis, where like even though they look tired, they might not be. Now Grisham, you mentioned he's a huge light heavyweight, especially when he's not making weight. He's got to be. I don't know how much taller he is than William Knight, but it's pretty significant. He's long and lengthy. I would say he's a technically sound kickboxer. He likes to counter strike. He draws attacks out well with his feints. Good head movement that he uses to land his counter shots. He's still I'd say he has decent power. Like he's not like a big cracker for the division, but he can definitely land some good shots. I like that he targets the body. He's pretty solid in the clinch. He's a position that he's usually really effective though the one outlier was the Marcin Tybura fight. Tybura had a lot of success there. I think that says more about Tybura than Grisham. But Grisham will get some takedowns. He likes trips. He likes judo throws. I don't think if William Knight tries, he's got good hip control. So if William Knight tries a lateral drop on him, I think William Knight will find himself on bottom. He can shoot on the hips though and get some decent entries. And he showed solid takedown defense against Jordan Johnson, who's a much better wrestler than William Knight. So as far as prediction goes, this is probably the one that we're on opposite sides probably pretty strongly. Knight has a lot of raw tools, but Grisham is just technically more sound than him. I think he beats Knight to the punch. I think he outworks Knight from distance. And then I think when he gets to the clinch battles, I actually think Grisham's going to win the clinch battles. I think Grisham's going to win the wrestling battles. I think we could see a boring, very clinch-heavy fight, but give me Grisham by decision. He might even get a late stoppage in the third round, but I'm going to say he gets a decision.
There we go. Yet a little more disagreement on this card, and Keith is the one pulling for Maxime Grisham to keep his UFC adventure going. Next up, a flyweight matchup between Alex Perez and Matt Schnell. A matchup, we're hoping third time is the charm for this one, as it has been canceled or postponed twice already. Perez, the 29-year-old Californian, is 24-6 overall. He is 6-2 since joining the UFC out of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series. He did lose his last time out. It was all the way back in November of 2020, a first-round guillotine choke submission at the hands of Davison Figueiredo that then paved the way for Figueiredo to fight for the flyweight title in his next fight. That broke a 3-fight win streak for Perez over Jussier Formiga, Jordan Espinoza, and Mark De La Rosa. He'll be taking on Schnell. The 32-year-old Louisianan by way of Texas is 15-6 overall. He is 5-4 since joining the UFC out of the flyweight 24th season of The Ultimate Fighter. While he's 5-4 in the UFC, he is 5-3 at flyweight. He did take one fight at bantamweights. That was, I believe, against Rob Font. Did not go so well for him. This fight was originally made last September, was postponed, and I cannot remember why that first time. They remade it for December, and it got bounced that time because Schnell had some medical issues that I believe were related to his weight cut. This, again, third time, we hope is the charm, because this has been a very exciting fight every time it's come up. But nonetheless, Perez, as of right now, I believe he's the biggest favorite on the card. He's minus 400, Schnell plus 310 as the underdog.
What?
Keith, I'm going to hand it right to you. That face said it all. Break down this fight for me and tell me who you think wins and how.
You know what? So I'm going to say this. So we've broke down this fight. I think this is the third time we've made it. We'd actually made it. I know it's been booked a bunch of times. We actually made the prediction.
Okay. You ready for something crazy before you go? The odds are getting wider each time.
Yeah.
Like the odds they were wide in December, but they were like, Perez was like minus 320. Now he's minus 400. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes no sense to me. Like, Snell's not a bum. Like, Snell's pretty good. And yeah. I mean, I like Alex Perez. So I want to say something. I'm basically going to read my notes like for the third straight time. Like, I haven't changed anything. Nothing has really. I know Schnell got sick or whatever, and could be weight cutting issues. So there's things that, and I'm not accusing him of weight cutting, but I'm saying like during the week when they concerns with medical could be weight cut. Well, like, there could be factors that open it more. But that's crazy, and I'm probably why I had such a reaction to it is because we've already predicted this fight so many times. I didn't really pay attention to this week. Like, I just copy paste my notes. I'm gonna read it. I'm just really surprised. I you know, anybody's seen the other two, I'll give you the lead, right? I picked Perez to win. So, but like negative 160, negative 170, like. You know, and I think that might have even been big. Like, if Schnell beats Perez, I wouldn't be shocked. No, Perez is a really big flyweight. He's a pressure fighter. He fights behind a high guard. He's an accurate striker, good right hand. He will target the body. I love his calf kicks, some of the best leg kicks in the game. Very solid wrestler. I mean, he took down Figueiredo. Solid top control, good ground and pound. Everyone knows I'm high on Alex Perez. I picked him to beat Figueiredo, and I was feeling really good. I was pretty confident about that pick. And he's the first minute was looking pretty well. Schnell, well-rounded, really good footwork. I like his pressure. He's an aggressive striker, has some good power. Go back to the fight against Pantoja, the one that he lost. He rocked Pantoja in that fight. He hurt Bonarine a lot. He's matched up and done well against some tough guys in the division. That's why I'm shocked by those odds. He uses feints really well to set up openings from distance. He's a good pocket boxer. Will slide in the pocket, throw down. He's willing to brawl in the pocket. Probably going to invest because his chin might be an issue. I mean, he's been knocked out. I mean, Pantoja rocked him in that fight and then knocked him out. Tyson Nam hurt him too. But he's also a very good grappler. He's got 8 submission wins. He likes to attack guillotines, which we know is a problem for Alex Perez. He also can get some submissions off his back, triangles, arm bars. He might be overconfident in his grappling though, because he both guard against Pantoja. I'm willing to remove that line because this is the third time I've said it, so hopefully he doesn't do that. But he does well to get right back up. So as far as prediction goes, this is a really dope fight. I feel like we've been waiting for this one forever now. The line is absolute obscurity. It should be really close. Snell's a good fighter, and he has definitely an avenue of victory, whether he catches a submission in a scramble or just catches Perez coming in. But I'm going to pick Perez. I picked him to beat Figueiredo. I'm not going to give up against him now against Schnell. I still think Perez is one of the best guys in the division. Give me Perez by decision.
I agree with you basically top to bottom there. I think both these guys, well, I mean, Alex Perez is a current guy in the title picture. I mean, he might be fighting for the title in his next fight if he wins here. And Schnell has certainly has that potential. If he wins here, he's may only be one more fight away. But Perez, one of the most well-rounded guys in the division. He's at least good everywhere. He's capable of finishing everywhere. That's a dangerous guy. And when you add on top of that he's beaten better competition than Schnell has so far. And even though they're both big flyweights, Schnell is the one who has demonstrated difficulty making the weight cut where Perez really has not yet. All those things, nudge me further in Perez's direction. So I'm with you. Give me Perez by decision.
Can I just say one thing before we move on to the next fight that I think you got really wrong? You said that Perez is in line for a title shot coming up soon. I think you forgot that Davis and Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno has only fought each other 3 times, and it's definitely the best of 17. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, so, we need to run that one through one more time.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it 14 more times.
Yep. So might as well get another paycheck while you're waiting for that series to finish. We stay in the flyweight division, but move over to the other locker room, and it is Roxanne Modafferi versus Casey O'Neill in what will probably end up being the biggest disparity in fight experience between any two UFC competitors that you will see all year. Modafferi, the 39-year-old Delaware-born, longtime Japan native, now fighting out of Las Vegas, is 25-19 over the course of a frankly legendary career. She is one of the last living, last active, true pioneers of women's MMA. She is on a 2-fight losing streak, those both being unanimous decisions, first against Viviane Araújo, and then most recently against Taila Santos, to whom she lost at UFC 266 back in September. She'll be taking on O'Neill, the 24-year-old Australian, certainly one of the most exciting up-and-coming prospects in that division. And that's saying a lot because the UFC women's flyweight division is stacked with up-and-coming exciting prospects. She's a perfect 8-0 in her career. She is a perfect 3-0 since joining the UFC out of her hometown promotion, Eternal MMA and UAE Warriors. She has beaten Shayna Dobson, Laura Procopio, and most recently, back in October at UFC Fight Night, Santos versus Walker, she knocked out Antonina Shevchenko in the second round. So all 3 of her UFC wins have also been finishes. O'Neill, another one of the biggest favorites on the card. She is minus 360, Modafferi plus 280. So at least on the odds books, the UFC matchmakers doing Modafferi no favors in what she has openly said since last year was going to be her farewell fight. And while I generally do not believe fighters when they say they retire, just given the history, given what I've observed, I believe Modafferi when she says it. She's always been a very cerebral person in and out of the cage or ring. She's always had other irons in the fire. She's written books. She teaches. So, I believe this is probably the last time we'll see her. Keith, if you can, give me some hope that it's not going to be as ugly as the odds say it is. But either way, speak your truth.
Yeah, what the hell, UFC? This is Roxanne Modafferi. Don't you just she's a little lovable goofball that the nicest girl on the planet, never ruffled any feathers. Can you just call up Scott Coker and be like, hey, Scott, what's that porn star girl doing? Can we give her to Roxanne Modafferi or what's what's that Hooters girl you guys found? Let's give her to Roxy. Just at a last fight, one last hour. I mean, come on. So being this is her last fight and she's had, I don't know, about 102 fights on her record, I doubt we get a new wrinkle from Modafferi in their last fight. I mean, she's not a good athlete, but she just makes up for it with just pure alpha and just desire, if that makes sense. She's high output on the feet, kind of blitz forward, throwing punches, has so many defensive holes. I mean, she's slow, no head movement, no power on her shots, but if she can get to her positions, and it's funny because you look at her, you wouldn't think, obviously stereotyping her look, you wouldn't think she'd be the grimy, get in the clinch, make it ugly, make it dirty, grind out minutes and rounds, and that's what she does. A good plumb clinch due to her height. Will look for a takedown. She will shoot without any setup, and she almost dives into her entries. They're always kind of ugly. But if she can pull the fight to the ground, she's got some solid ground and pound. She is a submission threat for both top and bottom. Very weak defensive wrestler. If you press the action to her, you can take her down. But she's got tons of heart, and she's going to keep stopping. Which won't stop. She can get battered by O'Neal, and in the 15th minute in her last fight ever, she's going to be going just as hard as if it was, in her early 20s, in a championship fight. Now, O'Neal, I think she's 23.
24
This
now.
girl is, I love O'Neal. I love her attitude. I love her bad girl, trash talking, European vibe to her, which is kind of what we need, because it doesn't come off fake to me. It comes off like she's oozing with confidence, and I just love that. She's a high volume Muay Thai style striker on the feet. Her pressure folded Antonina Shevchenko, destroyed her. Fast, accurate hands, plus power, and she's only coming into her power. Little defensive holes, she kind of keeps her chin high, but other than that, really, and that's something she could easily fix being at her age. I like that she likes to wrestle. She's very good at her wrestling too. She chains takedowns together well, solid grappling, heavy top pressure. I mean, all you gotta do is go through her record so far in the UFC, and she's won different ways. I mean, she finished Shayna Dobson with ground and pound. She submitted Procopio with a grappling. I mean, with Shevchenko was just her pressure. So even though this is Roxy's retirement fight, this is O'Neal's showcase fight. This is you know what this is? This is very boxing. Oh, we're losing this name. Let's give it to something else. And usually I'm okay with that. Usually that's what I always say. Oh, this person's making his way out the door. Use their name. But that last fight, come on. She's going to give Roxy an all-time beating. I mean, I think she batters her on the feet until Roxy shoots in desperation for a shot, finds herself on the bottom and getting absolutely blasted. This happens for 3 rounds. O'Neal wins in a blowout. With last memory we have of Moxafari is all bloodied up, and I think we see multiple 10-8 rounds. Give me O'Neal and a destruction, terrible lopsided decision.
Yeah. I won't pull out the full Roxanne Modafferi tribute impromptu here. Catch us on the recap for that one. But if you've only come to this sport in the last 4 or 5 years, it would be difficult to explain to you kind of how important she was to the formative years of a lot of fans of the era that Keith and I come from. It's impossible to explain to someone who wasn't there. She was the fighter who's just in the forums. And I mean, MMA forums are a terrible, scummy place full of shitty people. And even there, she was just universally revered and liked. I can't imagine. Is there a fighter on the planet who doesn't like Roxanne Modafferi? Even her opponents? No. I agree. Not much of an athlete, even in her prime, and certainly she's not in her prime now. But has done more with less than just about any other fighter ever. No, we won't see any new wrinkles in this fight, but she was remarkable for when she finally moved to the U.S. and started training with an actual team, a real team. And I'm not saying that to denigrate the teams in Japan, but just she literally didn't train with a team. She just would bounce from gym to gym and kind of drop in training. When she finally got with with Syndicate MMA, she did add some wrinkles around 2016, 2017, 2018. All of a sudden, she was physically stronger and still not a brute, but stronger than she was. You could tell from looking at her. Still not a ton of power, but more power than she used to have. Straighter punches than she used to have. Meaner ground and pound than she used to have. It's what kind of fueled the little mini resurgence she's had where, her career could easily have just been over. But against Tayla Santos and Viviane Araújo, she was just overpowered by younger, stronger, faster women. And O'Neal is all of that and then some. She's probably even stronger and even a better athlete than Tayla Santos, who's a plus athlete, and she's meaner. It breaks my heart to say it, but I don't think this thing sees the final. I think O'Neal starts teeing off on her in the first round. When Modafferi will try to get it to the ground because she knows, where her best chance of winning or at least surviving is. But against O'Neal, even the ground's not going to be a safe place. When this goes to the ground, it's going to be when, where, and how O'Neal wants it there, and the beating will continue. Give me Casey O'Neill by second round TKO, probably ground strikes.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question: Is Darren Elkins married? Do we know?
I don't know.
All right. Whether he's married or not doesn't matter. We should have Darren Elkins and Roxanne Modafferi have a baby together. So just like the biggest heart, tough, no athleticism, but insanely tough future of MMA right there. Let's make it happen. We tried to make love connection before. Let's try to hook up Darren Elkins and Roxanne Modafferi.
I believe Roxy is already spoken for. Otherwise, I would be completely on board with this.
All right. First of all, screw Roxanne Modafferi's husband. Unless it's Darren Elkins, screw that guy. No, all joking aside. I'm sure if he's married to Roxanne Modafferi, I'm sure he's an absolute wonderful human being himself.
He would have to be.
Like, just take one for the team, man. Like, we don't have to they don't have to do the dirty. We can. It's 2022. We could take some chromosomes and make it happen.
This is the Short Hog Radio Network signing off. Our YouTube page will be shut down tomorrow. Oh boy, I'm going to stop recording. Well, as much as Keith and I would like to continue playing matchmaker for UFC fighters, we've got nothing on whatever matchmaker continues to find Andrei Arlovsky winnable fights in the UFC at age 42. Next up is the ageless Belarusian, the former UFC heavyweight champion, the eternally relevant contender against Jared Vanderaa. Arlovsky, 42 years old, out of Minsk, Belarus, has been living in training in the United States for quite a long time, though. He is 21-14 with 1 no contest in the UFC, 32-20 with 2 no contests overall. That other no contest was him punting Tim Sylvia in the face in that fourth Arlovsky-Sylvia bout in one championship that nobody ever remembers happened. He is on a 2-fight win streak. Those coming over Chase Sherman last April and Carlos Felipe, whom he beat via unanimous decision at UFC Fight Night Ladd versus Dumont last October. Hence my line about the UFC's matchmakers being continually able to find appropriate matchups for this man. He is taking on Vanderaa, the 29-year-old Californian who goes by The Mountain, because he kind of looks like the mountain guy from Game of Thrones. 12-6 overall, 1-2 since joining the UFC out of the 2020 season of Dana White's Contender Series. He lost his last time out. It was a second-round TKO at the hands of Alexander Romanov at UFC Fight Night Dern versus Rodriguez last October. That blunted the momentum of his first and thus far only UFC win, which was a unanimous decision over Justin Tafa at UFC Fight Night Font versus Garbrandt. And the good news for him is that I believe that makes it so that Vanderaa can claim the lineal UFC super heavyweight title. Odds favor Arlovsky, -170 to get this thing done. Vanderaa +150 as the slight underdog. Keith, who have you got in this one and how?
Yeah, so you mentioned Game of Thrones, and I was thinking, well, instead of watching this fight, I'd rather hear Roxanne Modafferi break down the last season of Game of Thrones. So Andrei Arlovsky, he's 42 years old. God bless his soul. The guy's on a winning streak at 42. He's been written off 100 times, and here he is going against Jared Vanderaa. He's a counter striker who has low output boxer with high guard, tight boxing. His hand speed has really slowed, but he has this magical ability to have everyone he fights fight at his snail's pace. He dictates the pace and everyone follows. He has done this. We've talked about in the past. He's done it to really conserve his chin, to conserve his cardio. I don't think he has a cardio go hard like he did in the past. And we've talked about it before. His chin has made this massive comeback. We thought it was gone, and he hasn't been knocked out. I mean, I know, he's been knocked out plenty of times in the past, but there was a time we just thought you blow on it and he's going out, and that's not the case anymore. That said, and I've been pumping this narrative for a long time. I'm going to continue it. The narratives of his chin being gone is premature, but there's not enough narratives about his power being gone. He hasn't got a knockout since beating Travis Brown in 2015. It was like 18 fights ago. He does a lot of clinch grappling now, not so much like takedowns, but a lot of clinching. He's a good wrestler and he's a good grappler. We saw that early in his career. He doesn't have like many major holes in his grappling, but the biggest issue is he never really initiates actual takedowns and trying to control on the ground. Now move over to Vandera. Vandera is an extremely low level UFC heavyweight. He's pretty unathletic. He's flat footed. He's slow, but what he makes up with is just output. He's got a busy jab, though he does kind of pull his punches, which zaps his power. But he wants to be busy on the feet, and then he wants to get to the clinch, dirty box a little bit, and he likes to wrestle, but he isn't some like high level wrestler. He looks for body locks, trip takedowns, but he actually has weak takedown defense himself. And the only thing he really does good is, I would say, he's got a good chin, he's got some good cardio, and he's busy output, which he showed against Justin Taffa. Now, as far as prediction goes, Arlovski's going to do it again. Like somehow he's going to get Vandera, who's known for his pace, to slow down his pace, to not engage him. Then we have this boring clinch game where Arlovski is the more crafty fighter and finds ways to win those exchanges, win the little bit of striking exchanges we have. And he's just enough to win a decision. Give me Andrei Arlovski to win his third fight in a row. Andrei Arlovski by decision.
You said it all. Vandera, for one of the biggest guys in the division, just by the eyeball test, clearly a guy who cuts to make the heavyweight limit, at least 6'4". Really, I've said this, I think, before all three of his UFC fights. I still don't know what even one single thing he does at a UFC level other than be really big. You pointed out that he does have, pretty good output, but that is compromised by the fact that he has low power. Like, he's going to win a fight by just kind of chipping away. And that's built to order for Andrei Arlovski. Like, because even if he outstrikes Arlovski and lands a few things on him for a stretch, he doesn't have the one kind of just one shot kill power that's going to put Arlovski away. Like, Arlovski will outgrind you all night at this point in his career. So I'm with you. Arlovski by decision. It will not be pretty. It's not going to be a super fun fight to watch, I don't think. But the ageless wonder gets it done once again. And at 42, he'll be on a 3-fight win streak in the UFC. Next up at UFC 271 is a lightweight matchup that, at least as the card is currently constituted, is the opener of the 5-fight main card. It is Bobby Green versus Nasrat Haqparast. Green, the 35-year-old Californian, is 28-12-1 overall. He's 9-7-1 since joining the UFC out of the absorption of Strikeforce a decade ago. He fought most recently last November at UFC 268, knocking out Ali Akinta in the first round. A pretty shocking outcome, even for those who expected Green to win. That allowed him to get back on track after back-to-back losses to Thiago Moises and Rafael Fiziev. He is taking on Haqparast, the 26-year-old Afghanistani by way of Germany, I believe it is 13-4 overall. He is 5-3 in the UFC, and he is coming off a unanimous decision loss to Dan Hooker at UFC 266 last September. That blunted the momentum of back-to-back wins over Alex Munoz and Rafa Garcia. Odds are fairly close here. Green is the slight favorite at -165, Haqparast plus 145. Keith, this is a sneaky relevant fringe contender bout between Green, who some of us thought would never turn the corner, and Haqparast, who to some of us has actually fallen short of expectations so far. Who gets things going the right way?
Yeah, it's weird how Bobby Green was a guy that people were super excited about, just stuck in the mud kind of guy. Everyone gave up on him, and now he's kind of somehow, despite losing all these close decisions and all this, is kind of on a nice little run. And Haqparast is, I agree with you saying he's a bit of an underachiever. I should say this: he's struggled when he's taken a step up. Like Dan Hooker beat him up pretty good. So Green is. He fights out of both stances, keeps his hands low, throws from his hips, which really works for him because he comes from different angles. Throws a lot of up jabs. There's a lot of around the corner, like peekaboo shots. He's hard to hit because he's got good head movement, but also he rolls with his shots really well. His fast stinging jab, he can strike while backing up, which is a rare ability. He likes to throw elbows when they're in close, similar to what we saw Calvin Kattar doing a couple weeks ago. But some of the negatives he had, and this is the biggest negative we always talk about Bobby Green, low output. Can kind of cruise at times. His mindset is terrible. His mindset is if he's not getting hit, he's winning. And that's terrible. He's a great defensive wrestler. He's really hard at, taking down. And he's a good offensive wrestler. I mean, he's a college wrestler, which we always forget about Bobby Green, but we never see him go for takedowns. I think it would actually really open up his hands more if he went to wrestling. But at this point, I'm never expecting it. Now, Hakurasi's southpaw, a bit of a counter striker himself. He uses feints well to draw out attacks and leave for opens. Fast hands. He's explosive. He really whips his punches. He can get a little wild, but he's got good power. He's when he gets in the pocket and unloads, he can end the fight with one single shot. He's a little bit of brawl in the pocket. Like I've talked about this before. He loves like the lead uppercut that Junior Dos Santos used to do, which is such a great, powerful punch, but it's such a risky shot, especially against like a fast, accurate striker like Bobby Green. Now, Bobby's not a big power puncher, so I don't know if he'll put him on one shot, but just something that just a high risk against someone like that skilled. He has a good takedown defense, but it really isn't perfect. I mean, Marcin Held took him down 3 times. Alex Munoz took him down that fight, and then Dan Hooker. Actually, what am I saying? I should say. Now that I think about it, I said it was a good takedown defense. It's probably poor, actually. Now that I think about it, it was good at one time, and I keep adding notes, and I'm like, wait, every fight goes wrong. I got to add more takedowns against him. So I'm gonna say he's got poor takedown defense, but he's got a good get-up game. Now, as far as prediction goes, this is when I really flip-flopped, and it comes down to simply this: this is going to be a close fight, and I simply don't pick Bobby Green in close fights because I expect him to do well. I expect him to probably be the more skilled fighter. But he simply fights down to his competition. He lets fights slip away. But I go back to the Clay Guida fight, like how close that fight was. Like, why is he having close fights with Clay Guida that now? So I'm going to say it's going to be a Bobby Green fight where he loses a split decision in a fight that he probably, if you turn up the volume, wins in 30-27. So give me Haqparast by split decision.
I've got nothing to add there. This is absolutely the exact kind of fight that Bobby Green will lose. And that's the story of Bobby Green for us, unfortunately. He's off my screen at the TV team, but I still scream when I look at his record, like just scrolling down the screen. I'm like, how did you lose that one? Anyway, yeah.
Imagine sorry to interrupt you. Imagine if you had do your scream at the TV people. Are sitting at their TV screaming at Bobby Green. Like, imagine John Dodson sitting around watching the fight and be like, "Why are you doing that?"
John Dodson, his feet sticking up from the couch because he's 5'1", throwing things at his screen.
Like John Dodson, no, he's not on the couch. He's standing 3 feet from the TV, and it's mom's telling him "Back up, your eyes are gonna get stuck that way."
Next up is a bantamweight matchup between Kyler Phillips and Marcelo Rojo. Phillips, the 26-year-old Arizonan, is 9-2 overall. He is 3-1 in the UFC. He competed and won on the first season of Dana White's Contender Series, but that was back in the days when winning on the Contender Series did not automatically guarantee you a contract. So he went back and won a few more times in the regionals before finally making his UFC debut in 2020. He won his first 3 fights in the UFC before running into Raulian Paiva at UFC on ESPN Sandhagen versus Dillashaw last July. There, he dropped a majority to decision, though it is worth noting that most people who watched thought it should have been a draw. It was, if you look at MMA decisions or you remember the fights or, go back and rewatch it, it was a pretty straightforward 10-8 first round for Phillips and then 10-9 rounds for Paiva in the second and third. That's the way most people seem to see it. Regardless, he is looking to get back in the win column here, and standing across from him will be Rojo. The 33-year-old Argentinian and former Combate Americas standout is 16-7 overall. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He debuted at UFC Fight Night Edwards versus Muhammad last March and got knocked out in the third round by Charles Jourdain. Phillips, another one of the bigger favorites on the card, is minus 340 right now. Rojo available plus 280 as the substantial underdog. Keith, is there much value in Rojo as an underdog here, or is this Phillips all day? How do you see this one?
Yeah, this is a tough one because Phillips, he's the one that jumps out the page. I mean, he's insanely athletic. He's elusive. He's really fun. I mean, he's good movement. He's light on his feet. He's fast. He's fun because he does so many athletic attacks, flying knees, spinning back elbows, spinning attacks. But he's technical too when he wants to be. Like hard leg kicks. He really steps into his shots. He can go for takedowns. He's well rounded in that sense. Both body lock entries or shooting through the hips. Good at winning scrambles. He looks to advance position when he's on top. And he's already beaten better competition. Like he beaten Song Yadong, which is a much better fighter than Rojo. Rojo, he's got a lot of experience, or like that. So like some of the things that Phillips will attack with, Rojo will be available. Will be ready for that. He's very aggressive on the feet, which I think is a reason why this fight, should. Both fighters are fun, so I think that's the reason why it's on the main card. He's a basic boxer in the sense that he just throws basic 1-2s, busy jab, accurate straight right hand. I love that he cuts angles well. He'll switch stances in mid-attack to kind of give a different angle. And good power. I should say plus power. He throws a lot of things up the middle, goes to the body, a lot of knees up the middle, calf kicks. Will sneak in a takedown. He's got 6 submission wins. So while I talked up Rojo, I said a lot of nice things about him. Like nothing, as I said, he doesn't have any glaring weaknesses, but he doesn't have like world-class talent. Phillips has that potential. I am not as high in Phillips as other people are. Like people were ready to crown him like future world champion, and I think if you took away some of the flashy stuff, people wouldn't be as high on him. But and then he did lose to Highland Paiva, but which I obviously don't like. I think that I'm taking that as more of a fluke. I think this is an easy bounce back fight for him. I think he dominates Rojo, and I don't think he finishes him, but I think we get a lopsided 10-8 round kind of decision. Give me like a 30-26 win for Kyler Phillips.
Yeah, I mean, this one to me is all about the upside. And I would say that this was tailor-made for Phillips to get just some kind of high-flying or walk-off highlight reel knockout, except that for as aggressive and just kind of straightforward, coming forward guy as he is, Rojo doesn't get knocked out a whole lot. Like when he got knocked out by Charles Jourdain, without looking, that might have been the only knockout loss of his career, which is saying something. And that was fighting up a weight class against Jourdain, a guy who can knock a dude out in alarming and unpredictable ways. And Rojo had been winning the fight up until he got caught and knocked out. So I do think this is tailor-made to make Phillips look really, really good. I think he's going to kind of style on him, but I am not going to pick him to get the finish here, again, just because it doesn't line up with what I've seen from Rojo so far. But yeah, Phillips, the upside is there. He's exciting. The UFC obviously can push him very easily if he just keeps winning and keeps putting on exciting fights. And this will be the start. Give me Phillips by a straightforward, if not lopsided, unanimous decision. The UFC 271 main card soldiers on with a high-level middleweight contenders matchup between Jared Cannonier and Derek Brunson. Cannonier, the 37-year-old Alaskan, is 14-5 overall. He is 7-5 in the UFC, though it is worth noting that he started out at heavyweight and has been whittling down ever since until at this point he is a middleweight, and he is actually 4-1 at middleweight, with the only loss at 185 coming to Whitaker, who appears in the main event. He fought most recently in August of last year, taking a unanimous decision over Kelvin Gastelum in the headliner of ESPN 29. He will be taking on Brunson. The 38-year-old North Carolina native is 23-7 overall. He is 14-5 in the UFC, and he is on a 5-fight winning streak. Those coming over: Elias Theodorou, Ian Heinisch, Edmund Shabazian, Kevin Holland, and most recently Darren Till, whom he choked out in the third round back in September in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 191. Cannonier, despite Brunson's 5-fight winning streak, is the moderate favorite. He is -180, Brunson +155 as the underdog. This fight, obviously, it's a potential title eliminator, and it's a very handy fight to have on deck as a standby just in case something were to happen to Whitaker or Adesanya. But great fight in its own right. How do you see this one going, Keith?
Yeah, I'm glad this one's on the card. Obviously, for just a backup plan if the main event falls through, but also just it's a number one contender matchup. I flip flopped a little bit on this one. I think it's intriguing how they stack up. Brunson obviously is southpaw. He used to be like a madman when he went out there, and he's really done a 180. Now he's a very like composed, fight behind a game plan, figure out where he has the biggest advantage against his opponent and exploit it. I actually think the loss to Israel Adesanya is one of the biggest reasons for that. He really changed his game after that. He's a bit unorthodox. Like everything he does, I said this before, is kind of backwards. He's flat-footed. He drops his hands. He gets a little wild. He throws from his hips. He can overthrow. He'll do a lot of the like rare punch attacks. So like he won't lead with a jab. He'll lead with his power shots. He'll do like same side attacks. So he'll throw like a left kick followed by like a left-handed strike. He also can be being a southpaw. He'll get like really happy with his power shot, throwing like the same power shot over and over again. He doesn't like being pressured. Edmund Shabazian, beat up his body a little bit with kicks. But as I said, everything's backwards. A lot of these negatives, because he's so unorthodox, fighters really struggle with him. Because I always tell people, if you wrestle somebody, if you're a wrestler and you wrestle somebody that, I'm not talking about high level, but if you're wrestling like a low level wrestler, they will do the same mistakes low level wrestlers do, but then grab some guy who never wrestled and start wrestling with him, and you'll take over eventually and pretty quickly. But when you take someone down and you go to like arm chop the plant arm, it's not there because they don't do that. They don't know what to do. They more roll over. They do things you weren't expecting, so you can't set up. And I think that was what you kind of get with Brunson, where nobody really fights like him on the feet, that he has success with it because it takes a while for you to really register what he's doing. And then while you're registering that, he's really good at suddenly mixing now into his wrestling. And he's really good at, and I've said this before, he's intelligent in the sense where he strikes when you're ready to wrestle and he wrestles when you're ready to strike. It kind of gets you guessing. He's a big physical guy for the weight class. I mean, he really built like a light heavyweight, or really like Derek Brunson's one of these guys. He could probably fight at heavyweight, and be a smaller heavyweight and be successful against some of the guys. Basically he's so physically strong. He likes to, throw a lot of kicks. He's got some power kicks, but work the close the distance following kick to get to a clinch, dirty box. He's willing to just grind against the fence, make it ugly, press against fence, kind of like a hammer fist of legs. It's little annoying things, but he's a good wrestler, and even his wrestling is unorthodox. Like he can shoot through the hips, but he's more of a guy who just uses his long arms to like snatch singles and press against the cage and just drop down in the hips. Not a real power through your hips kind of guy. Just pull you out. Not when I say power through, I mean I'm talking about like your natural entries, your Josh Koscheck's drive through on a penetration step. On top though, good ground and pound. Good, you kind of control position before he tries working to advance. So that's what I got for Brunson. Now moving to Cannonier, you mentioned both these guys are up there in age, which you don't like, but Cannonier is also huge for the weight class. You mentioned he used to be a heavyweight. He on the feet, he can be very patient. not the most technically sound fighter, but he has this big power where he really sits on his punches. He hits really hard. He does well to move and slowly march forward, stalking his prey, forcing them on their back foot, and then he just picks his shots so well. He's really good at only unleashing shots or unloading power shots when there's an opening. We think about him as a big power puncher, but he throws a lot of like light stuff to set up, little trapping stuff to set up. He's very intelligent in that sense. Throws. He doesn't really throw leg kicks enough. When he does, they're really good. He improved his takedown defense. We saw that against Jack Hermanson, though I still think that might be the best way to beat him. He's decent at scrambling, and he has some of the scariest ground and pound. When you go back to the Jack Hermanson, he's on top. He can destroy you. But we still haven't seen him against someone who wants to really press a heavy like wrestling game like a guy like Derek Brunson can. I'm really torn on this, and I really wanted to take Derek Brunson, and I actually changed my pick during I shouldn't say during this, but like right before we started filming is when I changed my pick, and I was taking Derek Brunson the whole time. I could see Derek Brunson out wrestling Cannonier, and I think that's the best avenue, and that's something I think he's going to go for, and I think he's going to get some takedowns. But the only reason why I'm picking Cannonier is Brunson has always been this huge physical advantage on fighters. And this is probably the first time in a very long time where he's not going to have. He probably still the physically stronger in the way he positions, but he's not going to have this huge gap on guys. And then I've seen Brunson do, even in wins, even in like going against like Kevin Holland in a fight where he was far superior, Darren Till far superior. He still had moments where they hit him and they had him doing this, stanking leg, and almost got knocked out. Cannonier has bigger power than those guys. He catches it, he's going to put you out. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think Brunson's going to frustrate Cannonier. He's going to get some takedowns. But like every Derek Brunson fight, I think Cannonier's going to find his chin sometime. And I'm going to say Cannonier knocks him out. I'm going to say it happens in the second round.
Man, I can totally see that. This one was a difficult one for me to pick as well for all the same reasons you mentioned. And so my pick in this fight really just comes down to the same dynamic that you describe and just a different prediction for how they play out. I expect that Brunson is, Brunson's not the wild man that he was 5 or 6 years ago. Like, even getting starched by Whitaker in one of the weirdest fights ever, that didn't immediately change the way he approached the game. Like, he just kind of stayed wild and unpredictable. And I think I think you're right. It's only in much more recent times that he's become more of a controlled product. He knows that he needs to at least get some takedowns and have the threat of the takedown there, even if on the ground isn't the only way he can win this fight. If he doesn't try to get it down, then it's just Cannonier has 15 minutes to find his chin, and he's going to find it. I'm picking Brunson to go for the takedown, be able to get enough of them that, again, he spends that much more time without his chin right in front of Cannonier and probably does some damage and wins rounds while he's at it. So give me Derek Brunson be a decision, but would not surprise me in the least, if Cannonier does find that chin and starches him. The co-main event of UFC 271 is a heavyweight clash between two big men making a fairly quick turnaround. It is Derek Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa. Lewis, the 36-year-old Texan, is 26-8 with one no contest overall. He's 17-6 in the UFC, and he fought just in December in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 199, where he knocked out Chris Daukaus in the first round. That allowed him to get back on track after a deflating loss to interim champ Cyril Gane back in August, which in turn snapped a 4-fight win streak for the big Houstonian. He's taking on Tuivasa. The 28-year-old Australian is 13-3 overall. He is 7-3 in the UFC, and it has been a streaky 10 fights as he won his first 3 right out of the gate, then lost 3 in a row, and since then has won 4 in a row. Most recently, a second-round knockout of Augusto Sakai at UFC 269 back in December. The two of them meet here for the obvious reason of, well, they're both pretty exciting fighters, and Lewis puts butts in the seats in Houston. Lewis is also the moderate favorite. He is minus 190, where Tuivasa is plus 165. I think these two guys have a lot in common. I think Tai Tuivasa, we could see him being kind of the next Derek Lewis in a lot of the same ways that Derek Lewis became the next Mark Hunt. They're all guys who their knockout power kind of belies the fact that they have pretty diverse offensive arsenals. Their build and their kind of demeanor as a kind of happy-go-lucky guy, belies the fact that they, do take their careers pretty seriously, and they're all just kind of effortlessly popular. Like Mark Hunt was always a fan favorite just for being Mark Hunt. He didn't have to do anything outrageous. Derek Lewis, just, people love him mostly just for being Derek Lewis. Like he'll give you a soundbite if you stick the mic in his face, and he's a hilarious follow on Instagram, but you never see him out there with, Connor or Colby type sound bites. He doesn't go looking for the mic. And Tuivasa seems to be the same way. Like people love the shoey. You may have seen a shoey on our show just a couple months ago. I think Tuivasa has a lot of that same vibe. This fight, I think it has the potential to not be the most exciting thing ever. Lewis, when Lewis really turned a corner from being a knockout artist with kind of a memorable personality into being a real contender is when he became more patient in the cage and just let fights come to him. And it led to fights where it was a terrible fight until he got the knockout, or he was losing until he got the knockout. But after that, he stopped losing bad fights. Like you look at him over the last 5 years, and the only one that's even like borderline is the Junior Dos Santos fight. The rest of them, he's just losing to the best of the best of the best. Tuivasa, he's on a great streak. I mean, he's won 4 in a row, 3 of them in the first round. The only one that made it out of the first round, he put away Sakai like 30 seconds into the second round. But this will be the first time he's ever faced somebody with similar power to himself. With all due respect to like Greg Hardy, I know Greg Hardy probably can hit hard, but one with like demonstrated power like Lewis's. I could see Tuivasa being a little tentative, especially if he watched the Chris Daukaus fight back in December. And the ironic thing is, wasn't Daukaus the favorite over Lewis in that fight? Didn't he end up like the betting favorite? Or it was like shockingly close?
I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
Yeah. If he watched that, or I mean, really, if he's watched any 3 Lewis fights, I could see him being tentative. And the thing is, like, I think Tuivasa has turned a corner. Like, he's no longer a guy of whom I would ask the joking question, do you think he trains, period? Like, when he first got into the UFC, even winning his first 3 fights in a row, his skill set was just a mess. Like, he hit with power. Like, everything he threw had power just because he's a big and, again, surprisingly athletic and nimble guy. But, there was no real structure to it. It was just wild and chaotic. He's certainly gotten much more composed, but he's done it against, again, Harry Hunsucker, Greg Hardy, who's, even less experienced than him. The Augusto Sakai win was a good one. Like, I picked Sakai to beat Tuivasa. I was dead wrong there, but I thought Sakai would just kind of frustrate and smother and just, he'd mash him against the cage and wouldn't let him like uncork his haymakers, that he'd like pelt him with his superior reach, and none of it mattered. Like, Tuivasa came in with a good plan to beat Sakai and walloped him. But Sakai doesn't have the kind of one-shot power that Lewis does. I think this is going to be a rough matchup for Tuivasa. There are things he can do, to win this fight for himself. Lewis still doesn't respond well to having his legs kicked. Tuivasa, underused leg kicks, but very hard ones when he throws them. Tuivasa is not going to try to take Lewis down. I mean, this is going to turn into a kickboxing match, and it still takes more than this to just beat Derek Lewis in a straight striking battle. Tuivasa, his 3-fight losing streak was all against kind of borderline top 10 guys. His 4-fight win streak since then, Sakai is the only one who's even borderline rankable fighter. The rest of them, like Hardy, Hunsucker, Struve, borderline UFC material. This is going to be a huge step up for him, just like it was for Daukaus. And yeah, I think Lewis is going to be patient, probably won't be super fun to watch, but he's going to catch Tuivasa with something. He's just a niftier striker. I think he's going to make Tuivasa look a little crude and primitive. He's probably going to catch him with something in the second round and give me Derek Lewis by knockout.
Yeah, so just to answer your question, yeah, Derek Lewis actually closed as a plus 120 underdog, and Doc is closed as a negative 140 favorite. So yeah, he was a slight underdog. So Derek Lewis is one of the guys I really like talking about because there's so many misconceptions about him. So obviously he's this huge burly guy. Actually, burly probably shouldn't be a way you can describe him. He's just a big, huge, massive man, huge power. I mean, the most KO power, the most KOs in the history of the sport, history of the UFC, I should say. Mm. There's a lot of things we say about Francis Ngannou that we don't say about Derek Lewis, and they fit. Like I've always said, and I know you agree with me, this like Francis Ngannou doesn't have to hit you; he just got to graze you. Derek Lewis is the same way. I mean, if he lands a knockout blow, he does it. Like obviously he will connect with a big shot, but when he just slowly measures up his opponent and touches him, it's lights out. I mean, and he doesn't get enough credit for how accurate he is. Even though I just talked about he just needs a grazing shot, but because of his ability to measure and time, it's why he knocks the guy out like Curtis Blades coming in, shooting in on him. We have talked about in the past that he doesn't get enough credit for his athleticism. Like I described him as burly, and he's pretty actually nimble. He'll throw like a really fast high kick, fast he'll throw a flying knee and like this stuff, and he'll throw some stuff that just have it blocked. He knows because of his size and his speed, he's gonna hurt you just doing that. Another thing is he gets categorized as this. We see this big guy. Oh, you survive a couple of rounds with him, he's gonna gas out. Derek Lewis never gasses out. He actually has a really good gas tank where he's very intelligent in knowing where and when to rest. He'll take little moments of time and then he just explodes. But he's just one of these guys. He looks like he's tired, and he plays it up himself too. Oh, I don't want to fight 5 rounds. Oh, no more of this 5 rounds. That's bullshit. Stuff like he likes, and he's a genius in the fact that he has inserted a narrative about him that just simply isn't true. Oh, I don't run. I don't do cardio. I don't, like just little fun things. And he's really brilliant in that sense. And we've seen him get counted out in fights and countless times where he's losing and he makes a comeback. I mean, even like the last fight where he was going against Chris Dawkins, where he came in as an underdog. All you got to do is go back to like the Ilia Latifi fight, which is a grueling battle. And then he was able to win the exchange. I mean, I know some people thought Latifi won, but just the fact that that's supposed to be a bad matchup from guys who wants to grind, take him down, and he still had the cardio to win that fight. I've heard people call him a terrible wrestler. He's a terrible wrestler when he's going against Daniel Cormier. So is everybody. I mean, John Jones maybe isn't everybody else is a terrible wrestler against Daniel Cormier, but I just when he's on, he's got this crushing power on the feet. And when he's on top, he's got the scariest ground and pound ever. And here's another thing that we don't talk about enough: what a chin he has. Like, when has he ever been hurt on the feet? Like, I mean, I know that fight was terrible, but he stood 15 minutes with Francis Ngannou and wasn't hurt. I mean, when guys have beaten him, like, Daniel Cormier was taking him down and holding him down and beating him up that way. It's Ciryl Gane dancing around, getting a couple takeaways, kicking his legs out. Like, nobody's hit him and hurt him and had him doing the stinky leg round, which is, think about the run Derek Lewis has had in the UFC and that not happen in the heavyweight division is pretty remarkable. I'm sure there's a fight out there that I'm not thinking of, but in recent memory, I can't think of one. Now move over to Tuivasa. I think he's like only 28, which is extremely young for a guy in this position. You give him a glowing like praise of a guy that you said you want 180 on him as a guy who you said really question whether you train to now like he takes it really professional, and I agree with him. He's shown some immense improvements, good hand speed, He throws these like whipping power shots. I actually liked. I was watching the post fight, like some comments that after his last fight, Anthony Smith pointed out that he's being much more patient. He's not rushing things, more calculated. Chael Sonnen pointed out his new ability to cut angles and movement, and also that he was measuring, which has made him so accurate. And I really think that was really good assessments of his skills, because that's some things he's really improved. He throws hard, he has power, but he has hard calf kicks, and he's been focused on his wrestling. He stopped. I mentioned the last time he stopped takedowns for Stefan Struve in their fight. It's been 4 fights in a row since he's been taken down, and that was always a narrative that he can't stop wrestling. Now, sure, he got Sergey Spivak hit him with a headlock, which is obviously extremely bad, and we don't know what kind of cardio is because all his fights end fairly early. But again, it's been 4 fights, he hasn't been taken out. So now, as far as prediction goes, I'm with you. I'm taking Lewis, and I give Tuivasa a much better shot than I would have a year ago. I would have laughed at this matchup a year ago. I would have said, well, you're trying to get Tuivasa killed. And I think that could be the case anyways. But the reason why I'm taking Lewis confidently is it wasn't that long ago, even though Tuivasa's been on this great run and he looks great, it wasn't that long ago where we all remember him flattening Greg Hardy. But we forget that Greg Hardy hurt him. Greg Hardy was going in for the kill himself when he got caught. And then he caught him. That's Greg Hardy has insane, power. He's former All-Pro defensive end. He's a freak athlete. But Derek Lewis has put your lights out, say goodnight power. And if Lewis tags you, you go out. And I actually think this is going to happen. I think Lewis is going to land one of these big uppercuts, big hooks, something, high kick, something. And I think he's going to put out Tuivasa, and I think he's going to do it in the very first round.
There you go. 2 picks for Derek Lewis to give the hometown fans what they want and to not have to give himself what he doesn't want, which is a shoe full of beer.
So would it be great if somehow Lewis and Tuivasa became like a rivalry?
Yes.
Yeah.
They either need to become buddies or rivals. Like one or the other would be great.
Like it'd be great if they fight. The first fight's in Houston, the next fight's in New Zealand. Then we got the third fight, main event, Madison Square Garden or something. I would love it.
That brings us to the main event of UFC 271, a scheduled 5-round title fight rematch between the champ, Israel Adesanya, and the man whom he beat, Robert Whittaker. Adesanya, the 32-year-old Nigerian-born New Zealander, is 21-1 in his mixed martial arts career. He is 10-1 in the UFC. He's a perfect 10-0 at middleweight. His only loss, of course, having come in his bid for 2-division glory against Jan Blachowicz last year at UFC 259. He turned around from that loss with a unanimous decision win over Marvin Vettori at UFC 263 in June. He will be taking on Whittaker, the 31-year-old New Zealander by way of Australia, is 23-5 overall. He is 14-3 since joining the UFC as the winner of the Ultimate Fighter Smashes season, Australia versus UK. So 14-3 in the UFC, but worth noting he is 11-1 at middleweight since giving up on any welterweight dreams. And his only loss in those 12 middleweight fights is, of course, against Adesanya. He lost to him at UFC 243 back in October 2019. Second round knockout, but it was all Adesanya pretty much the whole time. Rather than book any kind of immediate rematch or anything, Whittaker went back to the drawing board, has won 3 fights since then, those over Darren Till, Jared Cannonier, and most recently, last April, in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 22, Kelvin Gastelum, over whom he took a unanimous decision. So here is the rematch. Adesanya is a substantial favorite. He is minus 275, Whittaker plus 240. Keith, I'm going to turn this over to you for your analysis first, but there are, one kind of statement I want to say, and you're welcome to agree, disagree, or leave it be. And then one question I want to ask you as you lead into your analysis. One, how great is it that there was not an immediate rematch? That we actually had Whittaker go out and win enough fights against contenders that there's any germ of interest there?
Yeah, it's the best thing that happened for 2 reasons. One, he earned it. That's like the number one. But two, it makes it interesting because Robert Whitaker kind of reinvented himself. And if we remember how bad the first one was, would there been a lot of excitement if he was ran right back? I don't think there would have been.
No, I mean, Adesanya would have been like a minus 500 favorite, and most people would have been calling for a knockout within the first 2 rounds. That leads into the other question I want to ask, because while Whitaker was back getting on another winning streak, Adesanya lost a fight, and he lost a fight by getting out wrestled.
Yeah.
Do you think Whitaker has seen anything in the last 2 years that affects his game plan going into this, or makes him regret his game plan in the first fight? Like, how do you think the knowledge, like the visual of having seen that happen, plays into this fight?
Well, I'll say this. I hope so. I hope he has seen that. I think, it sounds obvious, but I hope he sees that's the best avenue of victory is to, Yamahovich is not known for his wrestling. Like he's a black belt and all this, but he's not some power wrestler. He's not Ryan Bader. It's not, and he's bigger. He's known for his kickboxing. He's a bigger, stronger guy. And he said, well, I probably should wrestle this guy. And he won. Obviously, I'm going to save this to my prediction, but can Robert Whitaker do the same? I don't know. But that's probably his best bet.
And incidentally, please let me know how you see this fight going. That was kind of the lead in.
Yeah. So when I think of Israel Adesanya, I think about like stick and ball spots where like some of the stupidest arguments in the stick and ball debates you see on social media and different whatever sports radio is when they watch a dominant athlete now and they say stuff like, oh, LeBron James. Oh, if LeBron James played in the 80s, he wouldn't be good going against, the Detroit Pistons and the bad boys, Joe Dumars and Bill Lambert. And they would have beat him up and all this. And I'm like, do you ever watch a guy like LeBron James shooting 3-pointers like we'd never seen before in the 80s and spin moves and muscle and just, there's certain players, they dominate no matter what era. And then my argument is not the opposite. Like there's certain guys in the 80s that could play, and this is not a basketball show, but but a lot of them couldn't have because athletes evolve. There's better training, there's better nutrition, there's more education, and you just get better, stronger, faster athletes. And it's no different in MMA. MMA skills have evolved greatly since UFC started. So in 1993, obviously the level athlete is so much better. And the perfect example of that is Israel Adesanya. That's where I was going with this. Israel Adesanya is the perfect example of evolved MMA fighter. Israel Adesanya, to me, is the best striker in the history of the UFC. And I really don't think it's a debate. Like when you actually break down his skill levels of what he does. Now you could argue at a time someone was better at their striking was more dominant for their era. Like you can make that argument. If you want to make that argument and it's something like that, sure. But actual skills they show, I don't see anyone like Israel Adesanya. And this is a guy who's deadly in both stands. Let me ask you this question. What stance is Israel Adesanya better in? Orthodox or southpaw?
I couldn't tell you right off the bat. And when he's fighting, it sometimes becomes an irrelevant question because he's so fluid that he's changing stances in the middle of combinations.
Yeah, that's my point. He's so good in both stances. I don't know. Like if I was fighting him, I wouldn't do I want him to be southpaw? Do I want him to be orthodox? He's so good in either one. He's long and he's lengthy. He's so calm. He's so poised. I forgot the quote he said, and I what was the one? I don't. He says something like, I aim and fire. That was.
I don't hope and other fighters hope and pray. I aim and fire.
Yep. Aim and fire, and that's perfect about him because we were breaking down Costa versus him. We talked about Costa being a tank, and Adesanya is a sniper rifle. The guy's sitting there just picking it apart with us. He's long length. He's calm and poised. He's so intelligent. You see him out there in his striking, constantly measuring, constantly setting trap, constantly picking up reads, feinting with his hands, with his hips, with his shoulders. I've said this before. He freezes opponents. with the things he does. He's the absolute master of distance. He understands his range compared to his opponent's striking range. He's got the best vision I've seen. It's like the Matrix at times. I mean, you just look at past opponents. Derek Brunson, the first Robert Whittaker fight, the Paulo Costa fight, where he's just moving away from their strikes so effortlessly and then hitting them while he's backing up and landing shots when he's supposed to be on the defense. He's got good speed. He's got the best accuracy in the game. He's got, I don't understand why this is not talked about. He's got underrated power. Like, he never gets credit for his knockout power. I mean, he knocks everybody out, and he knocks everyone out because it's his placement. He just lands it on the perfect shot, on the chin, boom, on the temple, boom, broken nose, boom. Like, it's incredible. He's got great head movement. And then if you do hit him, and I've talked about this in the past, when you hit him, it's hard to hit him clean because he rolls with the shots so well. He blends punches and kicks together flawlessly, kicks everywhere, good clinch game. He's shown trip takedowns in the past. He doesn't want to wrestle so much, but he can wrestle. And the only time we've seen him taken down and held down is when he was very green against Marvin Vettori the first time, and that was not the case the second time, or when he was extremely undersized going against Jan Blachowicz. Now move over to Robert Whittaker. So Robert Whittaker has a lot of tools. Like, his tools don't flow together. They're more separated. Like, they're in boxes. Well, Adesanya's flows together, and that's okay. Obviously I'd rather have it flow together, but like his jab is a big tool. Everything comes off the jab. We've talked about this in the past. I love it. He'll double up his jab. He'll triple up his jab. He sets up his offensive jab, but he's one of the guys who sets his defense with his jab. Like, he'll hold his ground with his jab. Like, you're going to come at him, well, you got to eat these jabs. And when he's throwing him, it's more of a defensive move. He kind of does the same thing with his overhand right. He'll just wing it. He don't even wing it at an opponent where he's not even trying to land it. He's almost trying to either he's trying to find range, or he's almost throwing as a warning to his opponent, like, that's always there if you commit. And it really changes the way they attack. He's good at picking up his opponent's timing. He did that really well against Yoel Romero in their fights. Jared Cannonier, we talked about this. He did it really well in the Cannonier fight. He relies solely on head movement, which I don't like about him. He's been tagged in the past, but his head movement, his dipping style, he really disguises his left hook because he likes to. So you see it in like there's a lot of drills like that tennis ball trick. Everything's it's also like changing your core to a side, so you attack on the other side. You see it on I can't think what it's called, the bob and weave one underneath the rope, different things like that. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank what it's called, but little drills like that. He's really good at dipping, make it seem like he's being defensively way to dip while he's attacking in the other side. He does it with his left hook, which is his best strike. He also does it with his kicks. He'll dip to the right, throw in that high kick, something that TJ Dillashaw, we talked about TJ Dillashaw does. Corey Sandhagen, does it. But Robert Whittaker, I always say it's the Robert Whittaker kick where you dip to one side, you throw the high kick on the other side. I really like that. So he's got that going for him. He's really good at mixing up a variety of his attacks, like being like that. He'll come in with the left hook, then he'll come up to the jab, then the right. So he really mixes it up. But he's very vulnerable to leg kicks because he's got such a boxing heavy stance that he's open. And we saw that in the first Romero fight. Romero hurt him with leg kicks. He does lose a little bit of power because he lunges. So that's the negative. The negative about dipping with that, your feet kind of stay, you kind of lose position. He doesn't have like the best footwork. He doesn't really have his base behind him a lot, which is an issue. But one thing I've talked about Robert Whittaker, which I love, and these are two of my favorite. I know I'm talking a long time about these guys because these are two of my favorite guys to watch on film. One thing that Robert Whittaker does not, and we've talked about this on the recap, he doesn't get enough credit for his meanness because he's such a like ho-hum, jolly, never talk trash. Oh, you insult me, I want to say something nice about you personality. But he has a little mean streak when he's in the cage. Like, he'll throw the John Jones oblique kicks that people hate. When he's in close to the clinch, he's looking for slicing elbows. So the one thing that like scream at the TV thing about Robert Whittaker that I hate, and I've said this before, I'm gonna say it again. If he gets blasted with a really good shot, I know you knew I was gonna say this. He always tries evening the score instead of resettling and just flowing and waiting for the good shots to come. You catch him with a big shot. He's going to try to get it back, charge forward with a big shot, and that's what put him out last time. He was charging forward, trying to re-get another shot. He is a good wrestler. I mean, I know the whole wrestling for Australia, Goodwill Games. I mean, I don't know how much of a story that really was, but we've seen him. What I like about his wrestling is we've talked about not seeing it. We saw it against Darren Till, which was good to know that he still has it. He's got incredible takedown events. We saw it against Yoel Romero, even though he had a torn ACL in the first fight. Good top control, good ground and pound. Now, I said all that, and I really feel like I've really laid out things I noticed about these fighters. Now, you asked me, can Robert Whittaker win this fight, and does he need to wrestle? 100%. Like, to me, if Robert Whittaker wins this fight, he has to completely fight differently than the first fight, and that is to make it such a boring, heavy wrestling fight. But here's my question: one, will he do it? I say best case scenario, will he do it? 50-50. Like 50-50 shot, he even tries to wrestle. Okay. Can he do it? Does he have the skills to take him down? I put that at 50-50. After the other 50, I cut down to 50, and some math major can figure this out. Then my last one, is he big enough and strong enough to keep Adesanya down? Because we've seen Vahovic. Well, I mean, remember, Whittaker used to be a welterweight, so he's an undersized middleweight. Vahovic at light heavyweight with Adesanya being extremely undersized. He had like 20 pounds on him. So if you want to say 50-50, I'm just throwing out. I'm not some math major. I'm not saying exactly 50-50, so don't at me. Well, that would still give him 12% chance, whatever. Those three things, I don't know. So I'm like, if you want to say 50-50, his odds of winning is not good. So the way I look at this fight, I thought the first time when it was, some people would take out Adesanya, some people taking Whittaker. I thought Adesanya was it was one of my bold predictions that this is a terrible stylistic matchup for Robert Whittaker. This is going to be an easy win for Adesanya. A lot of people thought I was crazy for saying this. I'm doubling down. Now it's not that crazy. Now a lot of people agree with me. But I feel even more confident this time than the first time. I feel like this reminds me, and going back to the middleweight division, this reminds me a lot of Anderson Silva, Rich Franklin, in the sense of the first fight was such a blown out between Anderson Silva and Rich Franklin. And when they went to, and it was at that time when we were making the prediction, it was like a 50-50. Maybe Franklin might even been a slightly favorite in that fight. But by the second time, we said, how can he win? Like, what can he do? And that's the same thing with Rob Whittaker. Like, he's going to have to wrestle, and he's going to have to wrestle a lot. I just don't know if he can. So adding the insane amount of damage that Robert Whittaker is taking over, that's another thing we haven't talked about, is just, one, the injuries, two, the wars he's been in, getting knocked out by Adesanya, the wars against Romero, the fights against Till and Gastelum and all these fights, they add up. He's got to be perfect. Robert Whittaker has to be perfect for 25 minutes. I just don't think he can. I'm sure by the way I was breaking down the film on Adesanya, people knew Adesanya's my favorite person to watch on film. That's why I won't stop talking. I think Adesanya's going to start him. I say he does in the third round.
Yeah, I agree with all of your individual points there, but especially just the way you wrapped it up. In order to win this, Whittaker would have to fight the fight of his life. And even there would be unknowns in place because he is an undersized middleweight. There's no guarantee that he'd be able to take down Adesanya and hold him down the way Blachowicz did. I mean, Vettori wanted to take Adesanya down. He's a good sized and very, very physically strong middleweight. Just didn't work the second time. One thing I do like about Whittaker, his wrestling, and I know that the Commonwealth Games thing is a little overstated, but it's surprising to see his kind of wrestling out of someone that didn't have an amateur background, because he actually shoots, for single and double legs. He actually, turns the corner. Like, he seems like, if you didn't hear him talk and hear that accent, you'd assume he was, some former American college wrestler, at least on like a junior college level or something. But He's going to have to navigate Adesanya's range, like all of Adesanya's favorite dangerous ranges to get there. And again, even if Whittaker just shoots a perfect double leg, elevates and dumps Adesanya in his ass in the first 30 seconds of the fight, the most interesting thing to me is the next 30 seconds, because can he keep him down?
That's a good point.
Can he keep him down and advance position and do damage, or is all of his energy expended just holding this long, lanky, frankly, just kind of slippery and nimble dude down? Because if that's what's happening, then Whittaker's going to get tired faster than Adesanya, and it's not really winning him anything. It's a hard row to hoe. I as much as I enjoy like watching Whittaker fight and think he's a fun dude to root for, yeah, this is not any better a matchup than it was in 2019. I believe Whittaker probably is going to try to take Adesanya down, like either having watched the Blachowicz fight or having watched the Gastelum fight, where Gastelum, his feinted level changes and threat of the takedown allowed him to land cleanly on Adesanya on the feet more than pretty much anybody else has in the UFC, and at least use some of that, and use your feints and the threats of your offense to force Adesanya to react instead of him being a step ahead of you the whole time, But again, those are all really, really slim chances. I completely understand why the odds are what they are here. And I'm with you. I think Adesanya probably finds a finish here. I'm going to say, fourth round of what should be some one-sided fights are still really exciting in the moment. You never want to rewatch them, because once you know how it ends, then it's just a beating. But this will be one of those fights that has everybody, like Holloway versus Kattar or Poirier versus Holloway. They were like, Poirier versus Holloway was a super exciting fight in the moment, but I never needed to watch it again, because once I knew how it ended.
It's like when people are throwing out like best featherweight fights, and people throw out like Holloway and Ortega. I'm like, it's like one of the most one-sided fights I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, but it was exciting at the time.
But it was exciting though, like
because Ortega was the ultimate guy that I lose rounds until I win the fight. But once you know the end and he doesn't win the fight, it's just a beating. This could be one of those fights, like an edgier seat fight that's pretty much all Adesanya with a few moments of glimmers of hope for Whittaker, and Adesanya just wears him down with an accumulation of damage, puts him away in the fourth round. Any further thoughts on this one? We're 15 fights in, man.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm excited. These breakdowns always get me more excited. If someone made it this far through the show, we thank them. Make sure you guys share, you guys like, leave a comment, subscribe, check out other videos, do all that stuff to help us out. And if you guys keep doing that, we'll continue to keep making these.
There you go. This has been the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 271, Adesanya versus Whittaker 2. I've been your host, Ben Duffy. This has been Keith Shillan. Make sure to do all the things he asked you to do. And then also check us out on the recap. I don't know if I'll be on the recap because I'll be on site at the Toyota Center in Houston, but I might actually just pop onto my phone or my laptop and talk to Keith from the site and just give some firsthand knowledge. But, usually about 15 minutes after the main event, we're live on the Sherdog YouTube page, breaking down all these fights, what happened, what was good, what was bad, what was controversial, certainly talking about it in light of these picks. So if we got a bunch of shit wrong, be sure to check in and let us have it. But it's a fun, interactive community there. The chat is wide open, and we enjoy talking back and forth with you guys. Until then, thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy the fights.